like to call to order the December 2nd meeting of the Avalon City Council. Roll call, please, Denise.
Commissioner Cassidy?
Councilmember Cassidy?
Went to Housing Authority, I'm sorry. Councilmember Cassidy.
I'm here.
Councilmember Hernandez.
Here.
Councilmember Sampson.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson.
Here.
And Mayor Marshall.
Here. If we would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Councilman Olson.
Oh, thank you. Please stand for all of me. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And as you can imagine, the invocation will be thanking Father God and Mother Earth for this beautiful rain they're bestowing upon us today. And Mother Earth, please take care of us and all the other cities that are going to have to be dealing with flooding and washouts of roads and things like that. Please keep everyone safe. But we are going to enjoy this rain for as long as you will give it to us. And thank you very much. Amen. Okay. And now we would like to adjourn to the Avalon Housing Authority. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Cassidy.
Still here.
Commissioner Hernandez.
Here.
Commissioner Olson.
Here.
Commissioner Sampson.
Here.
And Chairman Marshall.
Here. Are there any announcements?
There are none.
Okay, written communications.
None.
Oral communications. This is the time for the public to speak. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes and no action will be taken. Is there anyone from the audience with oral communications? Okay, we will proceed to the consent calendar.
Yes, there is one item on the consent calendar this evening. It is the actions from the November 4th Housing Authority meeting.
Okay, is there,
Make a motion to approve.
okay,
Second.
public comment? Okay. Call for the vote.
All ayes.
Any general business?
Yes, Mayor and Commissioners, or however we're referring to you this evening. We have two items under general business this evening. We have an annual report as it relates to Senate Bill 341, and then we also have a workshop. And both of these items are being presented to us this evening by Elizabeth Hull, who you see up on the screen from our City Attorney's Office. For those of us out there in the viewing public, due to the storm, Elizabeth is joining us remotely today, and so please bear with us if we have any slight delays in the communication as she is here via Skype. So, Elizabeth, do you want to dive right into general business number 2, SB 341 report?
Sure. The current report is an annual report that's required by statute, and it just, is there an echo?
A little bit.
Sorry. It sets. Uh-oh.
I would hit your mute and just talk, and then I can relay questions if they come later on.
If she hits her mute and talks, we can't hear her talk.
Oh, I'm sorry. Turn your
Yeah.
volume down. I'm sorry.
Should I talk?
Yes.
Okay. So the SB 341 report just sets forth the statutory requirement associated with the dissolution of redevelopment agency. It created a new reporting requirement. There's really not much in the report this year because it's just been established. But in the future, it will set forth, how many units you've created, what you've complied, what statutory requirements you've complied with, and what you have left to comply with. And it just has to be filed on your website and with HCD.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Any questions?
Wait one second. Just explain like excess surplus.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
Excess surplus and says we can't be performed until 16, 17.
So the excess surplus requirement, under development law, you had to spend your loan mod money within 4 years. And then when they eliminated redevelopment agencies, they inadvertently eliminated the requirement to spend your money in a certain amount of time. And so now they put back into the law through SB 341 this requirement to spend the money that's in your low and moderate income housing asset fund. There are some agencies, some cities, communities that are not supportive of affordable housing. So what they did was just collect all their money and not actually spend any of it and not create any affordable housing. So a number of years ago, they changed the law to require you to spend your money within a reasonable time. If you don't, it gets turned over to the county or HCD. There's a whole process that you go through so they make sure that you're not just sitting on the affordable housing money and money is actually being spent to generate housing.
And that's the $5 million?
So yes.
Okay. And if, let's say we're a little slow and we don't get it spent, as long as it kind of looks encumbered or something, are we okay? I mean,
We need to have a plan in place to spend it. It doesn't have to all be spent by that date, but if we are entering into an agreement to spend it, that will work. There's also provisions in the law to extend the time. So if you don't do it in the first 4 years like you were supposed to, then they can add a year of things that there's just to a consistent, you don't spend it. You just want to avoid people just collecting money and sitting on it.
okay. And explain what and Oli probably knows, the former ACIA had a 52-unit surplus and affordable housing units in February.
So under redevelopment law, you had to produce certain units, and you had to, if you took units out of stock, then you had to replace those units within a time frame. We had a surplus of units created, so we're in compliance. If you were in compliance, then it would limit how you could spend your money, what you could do with it. But the ACIA was in compliance, so we're still in compliance.
Oh, okay. Alrighty. Questions, anyone? And, okay, so what do we want to do with this? Public, would you like to speak on this? Being that there is no public to speak on this,
You entertain a motion?
thank you. You so move?
I move the resolution of the Housing Authority, the City of Avalon approving a Housing Authority Senate Bill 341 annual report for fiscal year 13-14.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Further comment? Call for the vote.
All ayes.
Okay. And continue on?
Sure, okay, so the next item under general business is item number 3, which is the workshop that we convened this meeting for today. So again, Elizabeth is going to march through this, and the idea behind this was just to provide you with a broad overview of what the Housing Authority is supposed to do according to the law, and hopefully to hear about what the potential capabilities are and maybe set some priorities based on what you hear today, or direct us to maybe provide some suggestions for you to come back to consider at a later date. So Elizabeth, do you want to march through the workshop?
Sure. Does everybody have the slides? I know they're not up. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about the Housing Authority in general, and then we'll go through and talk about the impact of the dissolution of redevelopment and some of the funds that you have on hand. So your Housing Authority is created by statute, and then there's one in every city in the state, and then the city has to activate it. The city had activated the Housing Authority years ago. It had not been active, and then we reactivated it in 2011. So your Housing Authority is activated, and its goal or its job is to provide safe and sanitary housing for lower income residents. In The definition of lower income we'll get to in more detail, but basically you have to make less than $68,000 a year to be lower income for purposes of the housing.
Say that again, I'm sorry, I was thinking of something else. What does it have to be?
Less than $68,000 a year.
Oh,
It's like 68,432 or something like that, but roughly $68,000 a year. So the Avalon Housing Authority can do a number of things. We can operate a low-income housing project, we can construct a project ourselves, or we can provide financial assistance for the development of a low-income housing project. Most housing authorities, local city-run housing authorities, don't actually own their own, they just provide financing. Most cities don't have the resources and the skill set to really operate it over the long term an affordable housing project. Where you've got tenants coming in now and keep calling because their toilets are overflowing, that kind of stuff. So most city agencies, housing authorities, just provide financing and work with the developer to construct and operate subject to long-term covenant. The next slide talks about the definition of low income, and it's a complicated formula, but for purposes of Avalon, it's 80% of the median income. However, because LA County is so expensive, it's actually adjusted up. And so for our purposes, it is, I said, about $68,000 a year is the income of somebody who qualifies as low income.
and what about family size? How does that enter into it?
That's a family of four.
Oh,
So you have your housing authority, and then we had the redevelopment agency. And the redevelopment agency, some property and had some cash on hand. The cash on hand got swept away as part of the solution and was dispersed by the state to the taxing entities. So some of that money came back to the city, to the general fund. So the authority has, the housing authority has its own general fund. And you have a slide there that sets out what the dollar values were in all of our accounts around the end of the fiscal year. So the housing authority has about $36,000 in its general fund. There are also housing in lieu fees that were collected as part of the project, and that's about $260,000. Then, when we were part of the redevelopment agency, we also sold housing bonds, and there's about $358,000 left in the housing bond proceeds that can be used for an affordable housing project. Then redevelopment dissolved. The properties that had owned by the ACIA were transferred to the housing authority. And so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those that are still owned. They had been owned by the successor agency or the ACIA, and they've now been transferred to the housing authority. So those 5 properties and any cash that comes in from them go into the low and moderate income housing asset fund. We'll just call it the asset fund because that's a lot easier to say. So the asset fund has these 5 properties in it. It's got cash of about $380,000, which was the result of the sale of 2 properties earlier in the year. And then it's got receivables of about $1,200,000 that are due to it. So the cash that's in your authority general fund, your in lieu fee fund, and your bond proceeds have one set of rules that apply to them. The funds, the money and the property for your asset fund have a separate set of rules that apply to them. So they can be both used for the same type of project, but they have different rules as to how you monitor them and how they can be used. Does that make any sense?
Comes from Sacramento.
So it's just, the only thing you really need to remember is we've got one pot of funds that's got general rules to it and a separate pot of fund that's covered by SB 341. So when redevelopment agencies were dissolved, they were dissolved by AB 1X26, and that's what sets all of these properties over to the housing asset fund.
Thank you.
I thought this was already in the packet, I'm sorry.
Elizabeth, we're just now getting a copy of the slides.
So you might say we're on the same page.
4 slides back is the one that says Avalon Housing Authority assets.
Yes.
Yes.
That is the key slide that shows you what money we have. So the cash in the AHA general fund, $36,000. And then the in lieu fee fund and the bond proceeds, those top 3 lines, those have one set of rules that will apply to them on how we can spend them. And then everything below that in the low and moderate income housing asset fund, the $5,847,000, that has separate rules. They both can only be used for low income projects, but they have different reporting and monitoring requirements associated with them.
Just, you talked about the, I'm sorry, we're bouncing around now that we've got these sheets. You're talking about 5 units, and on this other thing, it's talking about 6 units, and the 320 Sumner's not listed. Is there a reason?
We sold that.
Oh, okay.
Under the asset fund, included within the asset fund, it says there's cash of about $380,000, $387,29. That's the proceeds of the sale of that property and one on Beacon Street, I think it was. The second, we sold 2 properties.
Oh, yes. 309 Beacon. No.
Yeah.
No,
There was 2 on Beacon, I think.
350.
It was
So
lower
we
discount,
sold
so.
2 properties, and that's the $381,000 that's listed there as cash.
202 or something.
Something like that.
Yeah, 206 Descanso. Okay. Now we got 1, 2.
And Elizabeth, where did the funds come from, the in lieu fee fund, the 260,000?
The $260,000 came from a development project a number of years ago that the city has an inclusionary housing requirement, and the developer didn't have the ability to build them on site, as I understand. And so the council agreed to accept cash in lieu of building actual units. It was before my time, so I don't know exactly how they came up with the number, but that's the number that we have sitting in that account.
Okay, I remember now. Thank you.
Okay. So the top 3 lines have one set of rules, and everything below that on this sheet have a separate set of rules. So the $5,847,000 that is in the asset fund, which includes the properties, the small amount of cash, and then the receivables, those are all properties and cash that were former ACIA properties. So when AB 1X26 was adopted by the legislature and dissolved redevelopment agencies, one of the things it did was it said the local housing authority could take over those assets if that's what the city wanted. And so that's what we did, and so those have all been moved over to the housing authority. So they're subject to the rules regarding the dissolution. And that's the SB 341 report that we just talked about a few minutes ago. SB 341 is the law that covers how you can spend those properties and monies. The top 3 lines, the bond proceeds and cash on hand, and the in lieu fee aren't as restricted as your asset fund properties. So SB 341, let's talk a little bit about that. In 2013, the legislature adopted SB 341 to clarify sort of duties and rights. Oh, did you have a question?
I got a hell of a lot of them. Like, let's start over. The Seraph is something, some educational something.
CRAP is
CRAP.
the Supplemental Education Redevelopment Augmentation Fund.
What is that?
So in 2009 and 2010, the state legislature passed a law that said cities or redevelopment agencies had to pay into the CRAF fund. The idea was if we paid into the CRAF fund, that money could be spent on schools and it lowered the state's general fund obligation. So it was a way of moving money from redevelopment agencies to the schools. Most redevelopment agencies and cities didn't have the funds on hand to do it, so they borrowed the money out of their low and moderate income housing fund, and now that has to be repaid. So the CRAF, that $1 million, was taken from our low mod fund and then loaned to the agency and then used to pay the CRAF obligation. We're required to repay that, and so we have to put that on the ROPS. The successor agency is going to put that on the ROPS, and every year you'll get some of that paid back through the ROPS process.
We will pay them back.
No, we will get paid back.
We
So
get
they
paid
have
back.
to draw the ROPS, which is our former tax increment money, and pay to the housing authority into the asset fund to make that fund full for the $1 million that was loaned to pay the CRAF obligation in 2009.
Okay.
So that's your receivable. It'll come in slowly over time, and that's just subject to funds being available through the ROPS process. Any more questions on how much money we've got and where it came from?
Is the CRAF, is that payable on an annual basis? I mean, you said that there's, we loan that money out to pay off what?
The ACIA loaned the money to the redevelopment, the low and moderate income housing fund, loaned the money to the redevelopment fund to pay the state obligation of the CRAF.
Is the state obligation payable annually?
We had a one-time payment to make the payment to the state, and now we will get repaid off the ROPS as funds become available.
Okay, that was a one-time payment, and that was in 2009, is that what you said?
This was the 2009 payment. There were other years that the legislature required us to make a CRAF payment, but this $1 million is associated with the 2009-2010 year.
This is commonly known as the triple flip, and basically when the state was running short of money, they reached their hand from Sacramento and took it away from local agencies. So they grabbed $1 million and they basically said, we'll pay it back to you over a long period of time. And if we didn't, they'd probably throw us in jail. So that's why the city paid this. There were a lot of litigation about this. Again, it was when the state was looking for money and grabbed it from us.
Okay.
There's no choice.
No choice.
Yeah. Any more questions?
No, thanks. Keep going. We're good.
All right, so those are our two sort of sets of funds, and then there was a lot of confusion about what you could do with the housing asset funds during the dissolution process under AB 1X26. So to clarify that, and we all know how good it is when the state legislature tries to clarify things, they adopted SB 341, which just muddied the waters and made things a lot more confusing. So what SB 341 says is that it regulates how we can use the money in the asset fund, which is why there are separate pools for that $5 million than the rest of the money that the housing authority has. So it made it a little bit more complicated for us. It imposes requirements that we use the real property that we have within the 5 years, so we can't hold on to our property for too long. It either has to have an affordable housing covenant recorded against it, or we have to sell it for development for an affordable housing project. And then it transferred the replacement housing obligations from the former RDA to the housing authority. We didn't have any of those, so that's not an issue for us. The limitations that are in SB 341, so the funds that are in our housing asset fund, it added a requirement that we monitor and preserve the long-term affordability of units. That is permissive, it's still not mandatory, so it says you may do that. It also allows us to spend up to $250,000 a year on homeless prevention and rapid rehousing programs. And then it allows us to spend money on the development of housing. And then it included the 5-year requirement, so we can't hold assets for more than 5 years. We have to spend the money and develop the real property. So homeless prevention and rapid rehousing. So if we've satisfied all of our housing production and replacement housing requirements, which we had, we didn't have any of those transferred to us, we can spend up to $250,000 each fiscal year for homeless prevention programs. We don't have to, it's optional, but that's the first line item in the waterfall of how the money has to be spent is on the homeless prevention and rapid rehousing. If we choose not to do that, then we can use the rest of our money or all of our money for the development of housing. We can have, our housing that we develop has to be for low-income people, which remember we talked about is 80% of AMI, which for us is that $68,000 number. Then within how we spend that money, there are requirements. So at least 30% of our remaining funds have to be spent for rental housing. So right now we have a down payment assistance program for property acquisition. These funds have to be used for rental projects, not a home ownership project. So at least 30% of the remaining funds have to go towards rental housing. And those have to be used for extremely low income people, not just low income. So for purposes of Avalon, extremely low income is for people who make less than $25,600 a year.
Family of 4.
Family of 4. So once we put 30% of our money towards those projects, then we can do no more than 20% of our money can go towards people earning between 60 and 80% of AMI. So for us, that would be people between $42,700 and the $68,300. So we have 30% going to extremely low, 20% going for the low income, the 60 to 80%. And then 50% of the funds, the remaining money, has to be spent on households that earn less than $42,000 a year.
Okay.
So if you flip to the next page, the income categories up for you. So if you look at the 4-person household category, extremely low. If you write 30% next to that, you need to spend 30% of our money in that category. Then in the 60 to 80% category, so between the 42,000 and the 68,000 number, 20% of our funds can go to that. And the rest go in between the 25, so then 50% of our funds go in the middle there, between the 25,600 and 42,700.
And it says the funding for moderate income families is no longer authorized, so we don't get that moderate number at all anymore?
Right. Kind of confusing the way they wrote it out, the way it's trying to clarify. But does that make sense? Sort of the categories that we've got to spend our money in?
Yes.
What was that last 50%?
The 50% can be spent on people who earn between $42,700 and $68,300. So it's the very low to low.
And 20% was very low?
I'm sorry, I said that backwards.
I
Yeah.
think so.
Sorry, the
That's
extremely
20%.
low gets 30%. So 30% of the money goes to people who make less than 25,600. 50% of the money goes to the people who make between 25,600 and 32,700.
Okay.
And then 20% of the money goes to the folks who make between 42,700 and 68,300.
Oh, got it.
So if I'm a family of 2, I can still make 68,000? Okay.
Yeah. The numbers go down.
Elizabeth, for the commission's clarification, if they decided, could they use 100% for extremely low?
Yes.
So, all right.
Yeah. The only mandatory one is you have to spend at least 30% on the extremely low. And then the other one is you can't spend more than 20% on the upper end. But if you wanted to spend less at the upper end and spend more in the extremely low and the very low category, you could. So, in addition to that, there's a limitation. A lot of communities who are not supporting affordable housing will try and do all senior projects. So they added a rule that says you can't spend all your money on senior projects. So if you had developed more than 50% of your previous units were senior units, there was a limitation. Avalon hasn't developed any affordable units in the last 10 years. So we're not covered by this exception. We can spend some of our money on seniors if we wanted to do a senior project.
How much is some?
Exactly.
I forget the percentage. I want to say it's 50%.
50%?
I can find that out for you. I can check.
Okay.
I don't remember the exact percentage for seniors. And then the other requirement is the 5-year development activity requirement, which we talked about. You have to spend the money or develop the property within 5 years. For our purposes, the 5 years of development of the property was through August 29, 2017. The trust date market was the date that the properties were transferred from the ACIA or the successor agency to the Housing Authority. That occurred on August 30th, 2020. So we have 5 years from that. The remaining slides are just a summary of the units that we own, we have, and the covenants that run against them. So,
Elizabeth, I want to just go back for the 5-year development activity requirement. For those properties that we have, if they're already restricted, we have deed restrictions for low income, we can keep them. We don't have to do anything. It's
Right.
if we have a property, I'm thinking of one in particular, that's not exclusively used for low income, we have until August 29th, 2017 to get rid of that property or to dedicate it to low income purposes.
Yep, that's just where I was going. So the remaining slides talk about each of the properties and the covenants that restrict them. The slide for 206 Whitley Avenue explains that property, and that's the one that's of concern. It's a 5-unit apartment complex. 2 of the units are currently occupied. It doesn't have an income restriction or anything reported against it. And so this is the one that we either need to develop or dispose of by that 2017 date. Pursuant to SB 341.
If we sell it, do we have any relocation responsibility?
Yes.
You're not the attorney.
We've talked about this.
It is possible we will have a relocation obligation. We would have to look at what documents we have that relate to putting those people into those units to determine whether or not they qualify. And I don't know that we've done that analysis yet.
Because the tenants were there prior to the purchase of the property.
Correct.
So they were paying market rate at the time that the property was, whatever market rate was, whoever owned the property before, they were paying that, correct?
Okay. So by our act acquiring property, that can sometimes trigger relocation. However, if their leases have expired by their own terms, then, we do not owe them. I would just need more information about those specific projects or properties before we can determine who was entitled to relocation and who wasn't.
Basically, that kind of cut in and out, Elizabeth. I think what you said is, to the extent that if there were people there that were living that were low income at the time that we acquired the property, then we will owe them some type of relocation benefits.
Right.
If they weren't low income at the time, they're on their own?
We'd have to look at that, because I don't know if they become low income now, whether we have obligations to them, so.
Right.
And if we move them to other low income, that could it be a straight across move? Would we still be required for relocation expense?
If they're eligible for relocation, we're required to help to assist them find a new home, a new place to live, and then we would still be responsible for the cost of that move. There would still be a relocation cost associated. But that assumes they're eligible, and I don't know that they will be eligible.
So, but let me, hypothetically, though we move them, but it's to a place that they can't afford, then for a certain period of time, we have to supplement that. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
So, that sort of summarizes where we are and what we have. The question sort of before you for consideration is, what is the council's priority for these funds and these properties, particularly the Whitley property? The funds that we currently have, there is one, the council had previously entered into an ENA with Mr. Flynn. I'm not sure if he's there.
Elizabeth, Mike is here. Yes.
Hi. So we entered into an ENA with Mr. Flynn for the development of our project. The term of that ENA expired back in August. We haven't renewed, but we did put that obligation on the Ross for this period. Because we hadn't been any sort of closure or policy correction to how we wanted. At this point, that ENA has expired and the funds are no longer encumbered to that project. I understand that Mr. Flynn submitted a pro forma today that I have not had an opportunity yet. There were some concerns with the previous pro forma. And we need to look at this one and see, if we feel more comfortable. But the funds that you have here are now all unencumbered. You could earmark them for Mr. Flynn's project, for another project. You could do requests for proposals from developers. It's sort of, you have an open book at this point and can proceed in any way that you want.
Elizabeth, hang on one second. I just want to make sure that you all know what she's speaking to. This document is the one that we received from Mr. Flynn this afternoon. Everybody was given a copy. I know that you just got it. Mike and I just talked about it this afternoon as well, so we only talked about it on a very high level. So as Elizabeth is saying, we'd want to spend some time with Mike and make sure we understand everything in here.
Sure.
And just to give you a little background, because again, that kind of got garbled as it was traveling across the Pacific Ocean. We had previously had a pro forma and we had some financial analysis done on that. And the analysis was that there was a gap in terms of if you counted the money that the agency could give and the money that he could give, it still wouldn't be enough to pencil out. And so as a result of that, then we have this new pro forma here, which again, without looking at it, I assume the purpose is to try and close that gap, but we just got this today, so we haven't done an analysis of that.
Right. Essentially what Mike said, and he can certainly speak to this himself, of course, if you want him to, but he is looking to invest more in the project to close that gap.
Okay.
I don't mean to oversimplify things, Mike, but that's essentially, yeah.
So on the Tremont housing and all of those, and they say that those covenants or whatever are going to go expire in 2016? Okay. What does that mean to us? And how do we get involved in any of that?
So
or
that,
do we?
That could be a use of your housing authority money if you make that a priority. We could use that to continue that type of.
Because it truly will die, and these people will all have to go to market rate?
Mm-hmm. So that could be a priority that if you as a body establish that, we could allocate funds for that purpose. And that would be, qualified, acceptable use of money for that.
And that's just New Tremont. That's the one that expires first.
This one right here. Okay. Okay. That was one question. Okay, I have another little question, and maybe I'm moving already into, I don't know, wherever. the senior housing that we're involved in, and that does not have an elevator. With this money, can we put an elevator or some kind of riser in there so that those seniors could have a way to get to their unit?
I would want to talk to Elizabeth about this a little bit, but I think that because you're putting it towards an existing senior housing complex and you're just, for lack of a better term, embellishing that, that would seem to qualify.
Okay. 'Cause I don't know how it was built to begin with without an elevator. But
We do have, just so you know, looking back on the asset worksheet there, the bond funds, which are the 4.358, those are the funds that we had encumbered with the exclusive negotiating agreement with Mr. Flynn. We had taken 3.8 million of those funds and set it aside for the 68 unit apartment complex. And we had an E&A exclusive negotiating agreement that's expired. So those funds are available now. You could decide to put them back into that project or another project. And there, the use that you can use those properties for are governed by the bonds. Because when we issued the housing bonds many years ago, we set forth in those housing bonds how we were going to use these funds. And it's basically for low and moderate income. So you would look at the project, you'd look at the bonds to see if there's a general description that satisfies the bond covenants, and then you could use it for whatever. And that's money that's available right now to spend.
so, and another question. So and it would be interesting to know what the breakdown of low, mod, or moderate income is there, or market rate, or whatever, to know what those numbers are. But could we could say, okay, we'll just put low in there, and we could switch out the moderate money? Switch the mod people to somewhere else if we just put lows in there? Because it says there's no more moderate, but if we take from old moderate, could we play with those? Does that make any sense?
Say that again?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understood that.
Because you've got moderate income people living at Tremont, okay?
That aren't subject to the Section 8 money.
Right.
Their money doesn't go away.
Okay, so so I guess the question is, so if, let's say there's 5-10 units there that are moderate income, and we say, no, we just want to designate Tremont all low, and now we have 10 moderates that we'll take out of there because those are old moderate qualifications. And we could put them in some other kind of housing.
So we would have to relocate them.
But, well, no, I think this...
No, I was just saying we relocate those moderate people to a different location because
Well-
they can make more money.
Except that, as I understand, we don't own the Tremont property. That's managed by someone else.
SK,
That
yeah.
happens to have low-income people there. And the issue there is that the Project 8 funding for that area or that development is going away. And so you have some people there that are Project 8 people that are now not going to have that money. And we don't owe the moderate people there anything. And we don't owe the low-income people there anything because they're not our tenants. But we could provide money to them in terms of supplemental rental income that would take the place of the assistance that they're getting now through the Section 8 program.
Or we could enter into an agreement with the property owner to buy down the rents. So have the property owner agree that, 20 of the units or however many we're talking about would be rented at an extremely low rate, and we would supplement to the property owner. Instead of going straight to the tenant, we would supplement to the property owner.
Okay.
The rent differential.
Okay. All right.
If we wanted to supplement the rent, could we sunset that?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
If we wanted to take the place of the Section 8 money could we do it for a specific amount of time and sunset it?
Yeah, well, our covenants would usually be 55 years.
But if we want to do it for 10 years, could we do it for 10 years?
Not with bond money. And no, probably not.
Okay.
I think the covenants the restrictions in the documents wouldn't allow that.
Because we'd eventually run out of money.
Yeah, we will run out of money. That's guaranteed.
Yeah, that was one, just to give a little background here, one of the things that the councils in the past have struggled with is that when you had the redevelopment money, you knew you were getting money every year. Now you're not, and so these are one-time funds. And so if you buy assets, in other words, if you own the property, that you'll always have an asset there that you can use for generations. If you provide rental assistance to people, as they spend that money, you will, at the end of the day, you will have had satisfied many families with lower rent, but you won't have the ability to sell property or keep, eventually it's going to run out. And so one of the struggles that past council here and frankly across the state have been is how do we balance this? Do we want to spend it on immediate people or make it a long-term asset? And one of the joys of winning elections is that you get to decide how to spend this money. If you look at it all together, it could be about $10 million.
With one clarification though, unless you happen to have an asset that you're not actually using
Right.
for low to moderate income
Right.
housing,
Right.
then you've got that 5-year timeline that we were discussing.
Correct.
So you can't just go purchase something to hold on to that money. It has to actually
Right.
be applied towards that purpose.
The fact that we have an asset that we haven't gotten any money out of, I feel like we should just put people in there now, in the housing that we do have, and then keep the asset instead of making it a one-time deal, but I don't know, that's up to all of us to decide.
And you don't have to necessarily decide this evening. I mean, we can
Right,
do a
right.
number of things. We can come back to you and give you some thoughtful choices to help you pick from. Tonight was just mainly to give you the overview of what money you have, what you can use it for,
Right.
answer your questions, etc.
Okay, so then help me, okay, so let's say somebody can only make $64,000, and they could be a renter, correct? And then how do we determine what the rents are then?
There's a statutory formula. You
Okay.
can only spend a certain percentage of your income on housing and have it be considered affordable. So we would look at how much they make and then calculate that formula, and then that will tell us what the rent is.
That would be nice to get those kind of numbers to see what we're looking at. I mean, if you make $68,000 and you're not supposed to spend over 30%, 31%, yeah, just those kind of numbers would be nice to look at. And to know if it's a family of 2 versus a family of 6. Because if you're a big family, you can make more money. So
RSG, your housing consultant, can calculate that for you. So we can put a memo together and send that out to the council that just sort of summarizes that, so you have that information.
okay. Thank you.
In your staff report, it gave you, and this was provided to the council back in March of 2013 when we did the last housing workshop. There's a summary of sort of the options, the common options that you see. So you can do, multifamily rental new construction project. We could rehab an existing project that's already on the island and convert that to an affordable project. You could do the rental assistance program. We could do single family homes, or you could do the low and moderate income down payment assistance program. So we just gave you a chart that sort of describes each, sort of the advantages and disadvantages, and the return on your investment, which ones generally work out better for the agency or the authority.
And
The other thing you can do with the bond funds that we have available is you could direct us to send out what's called a NOFA, a Notice of Fund Availability. We can send that out to affordable housing developers and say, come and tell us what you think you can do. We've got $4 million. What project would you propose for either the East Whitley site or place else? And then we can get some people in talking to us about what's feasible, what's realistic, and give you some options to choose from.
And so with some of the substandard housing we have, and there are low-income people living in them, I believe for the most part, if we wanted, and they're renting, so then the landlord has to be low income? Who has to be low income if we're fixing up a rental units that's substandard?
It's the people who live there.
The tenants who are renting. So what we would do is we would go to the landlord and say, here's $1 million, fix this up and make it, not substandard and a good place to live. And then for the next 55 years, you're going to rent it to low-income people at this, based on these four formulas. And we would enter into an agreement with the landlord.
And if they sold the property, that would carry over to the next,
That
the
would
new?
carry over to the next.
Okay. Okay. Because I know we're talking about doing inspections on the rental units, and that would be, when they get their, I don't know if we're going to be able to do it this year, it would be nice, but we do inspections and to weatherize and put heat in houses that don't have heat and whatever. And then the question is, let's say the house is really substandard, we go in there and find out it's really terrible, and those people need to be relocated. Let's say there's mold everywhere and they can't live there. With the homeless money, that $250,000, could we relocate them temporarily to an apartment or a Hermosa hotel or something with that $250,000? Because now we've made them homeless while we're trying to fix their place?
The homeless and the rapid, what's the phrase, is it? Rapid, whatever it's called, rehousing. The rapid rehousing. That is geared towards families who are homeless or would be homeless but for our assistance. So it's generally for people who are losing their home for whatever reason, they're being closed on or whatever.
Okay.
So it's potentially possible that this money could be used because their home has become unlivable, and so now they're going to be homeless.
Okay.
We could look at that.
Okay.
The homeless prevention and rapid rehousing rules just came in as part of SB 341, and they haven't been applied anywhere in the state. So there's not a whole lot of guidance on exactly how they work yet. We're still figuring that part out.
Okay, great. Council?
Can we talk a little bit about the project summary, Mike's project summary? Can you tell us a little bit about it and what you've given us?
I found out about this particular meeting last week, so if it seems like things have been happening last minute, it's because they have been. It's interesting listening to the conversation you guys have been having, because we've had this same conversation for the last 4.5, 5 years. I remember being here and having discussed over $7 million sitting in a fund waiting for housing, and that, it kept getting put off and not dealt with, and one day we said, the state's going to come back and take it. They're threatening it all over the state. Sure enough, that's what happens. This money is not money, it's a savings account. It's not money that just can sit there. It has to be actively used for housing. And saying all that, we looked at all the different options that possibly could happen. And then when this money came back from the bond monies, we looked at how you get the biggest bang for your buck. How can you get the most housing with the dollars that the city has, not having the city involved with day-to-day management of properties, not dealing with 15 or 20 different projects that it's trying to place money, work things out with different property owners. But how do you just place it once? How do you put it in the right spot? How do you ensure that it stays that way for 55 years? And you get a good quality of life for people. So that's what we got involved with this exclusive right to negotiate, so we could go out and start looking at this. We identified at first the first property, and the first property had some issues with it that required a very strong potential for it to have an environmental impact report done on it. That took a couple of years and a lot of money to go through the report and go through the analysis. We then identified a second piece of property that, based on the parameters that we were given, was already previously disturbed. And so therefore, because of the traffic issues and all the other issues that were cited before, we thought that it had a very strong possibility of achieving a mitigated neg deck or a neg deck. So that's what I've asked from day one since we identified the property, is what staff feels about that. I've yet to get a response. The second thing is that when the difference in the performance that we have that we're talking about, we were not aware of the restrictions that are on those monies, which means that you can only charge so much in rent, which is even more restrictive than what it is normally for low income housing. So what we had to do is we had to come up with less debt. For example, on this project, it's not 68 units, it's 48 units. And the overall cost of the project is in excess of about $17 million, of which the city would participate with $3.8 million. The portion of it that we can, based on the cash flow that comes from the property, you're only able to put a little over $1 million in debt on the property because the rents are so low that you can't put a lot of debt on it. So that means we've got to bridge it somehow between the 3.8, the $1 million you can put on debt, which is roughly around, say, $5 million, to a $17 million. Where do you come up with the other $12 million? In today's world, the only way it can happen is to get 9% tax-exempt bonds to go along with this, which are allocated annually or semi-annually. And it's basically a beauty contest. What you do is you go through, you submit your plans, you have to have a project-ready project to go. You actually submit it along with all the other projects in the state, and only a certain amount of them get awarded. What we've done is, based on Avalon, because we've not done these in a very long time, if ever, we've gone to the state, we've talked to the underwriters, we've gone through the whole process, and it looks very, very likely that we could win when we apply to get this type of tax-exempt monies here. So based on that, we're able to go out and achieve a brand new $17 million project, which puts people to work, does a whole bunch of other beneficial things, and gives us a new project with the city only putting up that $3.8 million, which it never puts up until we're awarded the project, awarded the tax-exempt bonds, and have all the financing set in place. So you're at no risk during that whole process. Up till now, I think we have spent in excess of $65,000 over this last year. We've had, I know we have this August date, but we have emails back and forth and conversations even in the last few weeks over this. So it's something that we've been ongoing working, and I hope we don't lose what we've done for this last year between marketing studies and identifying properties. We have a piece of property earmarked. It's under an agreement. We have the right to move forward on it. And we need to, hopefully just keep looking at what we've got. We've given you a pro forma looking at those lower rents, and basically we just have to put more equity in. And the city also has a package that shows, we've given you site plans and elevations. You've got a package now. You've got the performance, the updated performance associated with that. So you've got a whole package to look at.
And Mike's speaking to previously submitted. It's not with that document this evening. Yeah.
And can we ask what piece of property that is?
It's the piece of property that, well, I'll tell you, the piece of property we currently have is that piece of property that has the eucalyptus grove on it and Tremont Hall and the hill behind Tremont Hall. And as a part of the project, we have put in $250,000 to relocate and build a new hall.
Mike, is this by chance the project that you brought before the Planning Commission a couple years ago? Those
No,
drawings, it
no.
was in a similar, or that was near Tremont Apartments?
That was Tremont, just right here in the front on the right side of Tremont as you enter in off of the Canyon Road. And again, it was something that we just backed away from because in listening to the community, there's traffic issues, you're just putting more in an already too tight situation until there's a master plan that goes on with that area. This takes all of its access off of Country Club Drive, so it's all back up on the hill, doesn't even enter in through Tremont. So we don't have those kind of issues. So, but no, it's a different project.
So I'm assuming that the landowner is the Island Company.
Correct.
And what do they get out of the deal?
I believe it's $1,010,000. It's in the performance. I think it's a little over $1 million. It's over an acre. It's about an acre. It's an acre plus the open space, which would be up on the hillside.
So they get what? Explain. I don't know that stuff. Oleo.
$1,010,000.
Oh, okay, that's the site acquisition, yeah.
Who's
Oh,
gonna get,
that's it.
who's going to get the housing credits?
Very interesting question.
That's my next question.
That's why nothing is easy when it comes to this stuff, because you're trying to figure out every different which way. The housing credits, obviously, if the city puts in, if you have a $17 million project, in discussing with staff, you wouldn't receive the housing credits for the amount of money that the city's putting in. So you'd have to deduct that $3.8 million out. If we're putting in the differential between those two, then we would want the housing credits for that portion. So if it's a $17 million project, you're putting in 3.8, say 4, then you've got $13 million. We would want that pro rata portion of the housing credits.
Okay, then explain to me again, I'm sorry. Housing credits. You're housing people, so what are you crediting?
Any new development that has a requirement of inclusionary housing, you build 4 units of market rate, you have to add 1 unit of low mod. So if he has 48 units of low mod stuff here, that could be the housing credits for, I can't do the math, a bunch. Or if you have a new commercial construction downtown and you need housing credits for those employees, that can be these housing credits. It's just a way to make sure that the developers and the people that are putting businesses help satisfy the housing needs. 50% of the peak summer needs.
So as it would stand, I mean, so I'm going to build something and I go, how do I grab your housing credits?
You buy them from the city.
You buy it from the city.
We get 12 of them, he keeps 36 of them, approximately. And so if you want to come in and build something that is inclusionary, and you can't get the property to build it, you can come to the city and pay an in lieu fee, and we'll give you some housing credits.
Like we did that $260,000?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
You know, and I think that's something you need to note. I mean, somebody who's willing to pay that kind of money not to do something.
Right, yeah.
So, I mean, it's not, I mean, it's, you have to have enough critical mass with this to be able to hire a management company, to be able to manage it and run it,
Sure.
and deal with it the right way. You get too few units, you can't afford it. You get too many, we can't absorb it. So, I mean, that's...
That's why that number turned out the way it is.
It is, yes.
And how are you going to put water on that project?
You know, water's a very interesting thing. I hope, as you prayed earlier today, that it keeps coming because we really, really need it. But, you know, we're actively, I mean, you guys all know, we're actively working with water with everybody, trying to come up with some sort of solution. So, you know, inevitably something has to be done. But it's a very good point. For these projects to be able to even be entertained in the contest, you have to have a project-ready project, which means that we're going to have water figured out to even move forward with it,
Right.
as anybody would. So.
Right. So would you imagine if Tremont goes away with the low-income folks, those folks move to this facility, and that turns out to be market-rate properties for the rest of the town?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what happens, and I don't know if
Okay.
it's a bad thing. I think it, in
No,
some
I'm
ways
just,
it's a good thing.
well, yeah, wondering the scenario, because, yeah.
What happens is you have a lot of properties that have just sat stagnant for a long time, and this low income properties, they're a loser for a landlord because they're far less than what it probably costs to run and operate the property. That's why they have to be subsidized. But when you do that in a community and you go out and you provide a new 48-unit project that's new, nice, and you want to live there, you're going to have a lineup to be able to move into it. They're moving from somewhere into there.
Right,
So
right.
that means that those properties owners that are existing have the opportunity to upgrade their properties or clean them up and do things that, you know, kind of get out of the slumlord business. So, I mean, that's what you got.
What's the percentage of these that'll be for rent, and the percentage of, they'll all be for rent? None will be for ownership? So how does that equate to what the city's needs are? I mean, right, because what we're trying to do is figure out exactly what our community needs, right? I mean, because we're just gonna keep building units that are affordable, as opposed to directing our attention to the community that needs
Sure.
our attention towards our housing. I mean, there's a lot of single families and there's a lot of small families that actually need housing, and they can't live a dignified life without the housing, and we need to address their needs. And there's,
What we did, Joe, is
Sure would help.
We have in the performer, you look at it, there's a third, a third, a third. A third are 1-bedroom units, a third are 2-bedroom units, and a third are 3-bedroom units. The monies that you have, as I understand, and Elizabeth can speak to this far better than I can, they're earmarked for certain things. The monies available for purchase, those aren't, you have to use it for rental properties. They've kind of pigeonholed you into a certain product type that you can spend this money on. Now, you can choose not to spend it and send it back to the county, but that money leaves our community and it goes somewhere else. So that's, I don't think, in your best interest, but that has to be spent for that type of housing. That's what that money is there
You've
for.
adopted this plan to help us spend our money more efficiently? Is that?
Yeah, you could say that, yes.
Yeah.
We're putting up $12 million to match your 3.8 to produce a project that we think will work for the community.
Does this help address our, is there somewhere in this plan that helps us address our sewer infrastructure and desalination? We've already discussed water, and we all know we need that, and we're going to push for that because nothing happens without it, and no development happens without it into the future. But sewer and also our sewer treatment plant and our sewer infrastructure as well is in need of repair. So is this something that?
Well, I can say that one thing that I'm glad you brought this up. One thing we would want to talk to Mr. Flynn about a little bit more is the impact on infrastructure and pencil out some estimates on what we think, and then talk to Mike about that. So we in fairness to Mike, he's right. I mean, we just discussed this part of the staff report with him last week. He wanted to respond, obviously. He got this to us today. So I think it's probably prudent if staff meets with Mike offline and kind of can come back and address some of these things and walk through the numbers here and ask him some questions, because you're right. We don't have all the answers as it relates to the impact to infrastructure, et cetera, yet.
Yeah, and I know Mike has mentioned the check valves that we need down through the town, which is really important. Environmental strategies has also brought it to my attention that we need that main line that goes through the entire front street of Avalon. That needs to be replaced so we have a more efficient carrying system for our sewers, and that way we don't have to smell it. We don't have to deal with that in the future. So I think that's things that we need to put ahead of the development project. We need our infrastructure and our water dealt with, which we're working on, but I'm grateful that you've come up with these options for us as well.
If I could say several things. One, we have placed on the ROPS, which is basically the rules as to how you can spend your money. We did place this project on the ROPS as a placeholder for next year. So we have until, it is, we don't have to go to the state for permission. We put a placeholder on this, so you don't need to decide this tonight. We do need to look at the infrastructure cost, because that's what I was focused on. And the infrastructure cost, as I believe they are here, are $600,000. And we have to analyze whether $600,000 is sufficient for sewer, salt water, fire, and fresh water.
What about trash?
What?
What about the landfill?
And trash. So, that may be an issue where I've already had some preliminary discussions with Dennis Zage and Chief Krug about whether it pencils out or if that number needs to be larger. So again, before we make any decision on this further, we really need to understand from the subject matter experts what those infrastructure what those needs are, and what the cost would be.
Are you saying that's what we have on hand is the 600,000, or that's what the projected expense is going to be?
That's what this project summary for off-site structures says, $600,000. So that we're looking at for fire protection. As I understand it, we would need a new tank for this, a reservoir. To just have adequate pressure for fire. You need sewer coming off the site, as well as perhaps sewer looking downstream. In other words, what's the impact of adding 48 units to the mains that are in the system? Do we need to make those larger? What's the impact on the sewer treatment plant for this? And we'll be doing this for every project. And that's not only for this proposed project, but if the island company wants to come forward with a project for 120 homes around, which is what we've got a development agreement for right now, or we'd have to do the analysis for that. How much will it cost to lay the salt water pipes, including pumps to get it up there? And how much would it be for fresh water? And so these are all development costs that have to be figured in to see if this pencils out. Or if we look at that, let's say it's 600,000, and if it would be 500,000, then he has an extra 100,000 savings. Or if it's $2 million, then he's got to come up with another 1.4 million, or the city or the housing authority could give that money.
And
the housing authority could
And
put
we
up
make
that
that
money.
part of the condition then, with all that? Would that be part of the condition for the developers then?
Sure.
For the infrastructure, to put money aside for that?
Well, we're going to require that for all. Now, I mean, part of any developer coming
Right, I
in, we're going
understand
to be
that.
looking at that.
Well, as a condition?
Yes.
But we're also going, sorry, not to muddy the water a little bit, but we're proposing to do a fee study as well, and that's budgeted in your budget this year, so that some of you actually come out and figure out exactly the man hours, so to speak, woman hours, whatever you want to call them, it takes for each project and value that. I
The
suspect that a lot
percentage of
of,
what the project cost is.
There's a lot of unknowns as well, right? Because
Right.
we're getting into we want to create a more of a renewable, sustainable community, and we're talking about technologies that are just on the cutting edge right now as well, correct? I mean, we just don't want to plunge ahead with what we have right now because it's not efficient, it's not working. And if we plan on growing, we need to speak on things like reclamation and solar and things that are going to offset the costs and our burden that we have with diesel, and just the fact that we're creating energy here that's it's not sustainable and it's not efficient the way we create it. So I think there's a lot of things that we need to be discussed, but it's nice having a breath of fresh air as to the people of Avalon that need housing right now, and it's really serious. But obviously, there's other things that we need. We need to flush the toilets, and we need water for showers and drinking, and we need our sewer systems to be efficiently running through the city of Avalon. And we know right now that that's really something that's not even happening without us getting the sense in the middle of summer when we are impacted. It's not really. We're barely cutting it right now. We're 95% capacity on all these systems, and I think we can do better. So we're talking about the right things, I think. Absolutely.
I agree. One thing I would request, I mean, we've spent the last 12 months, 14 months going through this exercise. We've got a lot of information. We have a piece of property. We know fixed costs associated with that. I would request from you guys that for maybe the next 90 days, 60 days, to extend what we have as far as our exclusive negotiations, and let's come back to you. If it's not the right thing to do, then obviously you're not going to do it. But we'll dedicate the time over the next 60 to 90 days to spend time with staff and address all the issues that you've all brought up. The reason all these things you brought up are why this takes more than 9 months or 10 months to get through. And I think we're 3/4 of the way there. Let's find out and define what those issues are and what we can and can't do. There's only so much money in the pot. And then go from there. I don't think it's any harm, no foul, so.
Is anybody beating down your door?
no. No, there isn't. And to Mike's point, I mean, he's come back and answered a lot of the questions that we did have earlier, so I think we're closer to figuring out things now. So 60 to 90 days would be very reasonable.
To the end of January?
I would probably want a little more time than that. Maybe, I think probably 90 is probably.
If you want to give us direction, we can come back on December 16th with an amended ENR extending it to March 1st, 2015.
Yeah, because we'd like to read all the other, I don't know how much this has changed, other than a few $1 million or whatever. I don't know how much it's changed from not knowing what the original one is, I don't know what's even different, so.
We can do that.
Does that just provide direction?
Let's direct.
Okay. You got Ole's direction there, Councilmember Olson's direction?
Come back with an ENA that's revised to be an extension until March 1st.
Right, exactly. And in the meantime, we'll study this, and we'll have, and I will probably it makes sense not to wait until March 1st to come back to you. So we'll probably
Yeah, we can come back before.
maybe have an interim report as to where we are.
Oh, yeah, no, the agreement's all, right, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're good for the next 2 weeks in December, and after that, all the wheels start falling.
Now, having said that, and let's assume that we have the 3.8 put aside.
Thank you, Mike.
You still have a lot of other money. And so do you want to start discussing about how you'd like to consider, and this is a study session, and Elizabeth is semi here. She is digitally here.
She's here more than you are.
To help you with any questions you have as to how you want to spend the money, because it's not just the 3.8 million for the Hamilton project. It's you've got other assets that you can sell or you can manage, and you've got other monies. And so, again, it's up to you to tell staff what your priorities are in terms of how you want to spend this money.
Again, on the Section 8 and that money up at Tremont, that's just going to be gone, gone, gone. There's nobody going to save the day, right? Nobody's going to save the
Mike's
day
gonna say today.
on the old Tremont.
We'll keep our old Tremont up to his new development.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like that would kind of do that.
And then the rest of it turns into market rate.
2016, I believe, is that right?
Would it be wise to reach out to the community and or between us, represent our constituents in a way that we find what the appropriate uses would be and the most needed uses would be for this money, and see if we could attain those goals, see which ones would be attainable, that is? I mean, because not necessarily the most needed is something that is a direction that we can spend this money on, correct?
Well, maybe here's a suggestion. We already need to come back to you with our thoughts on Mike's pro forma. So a couple things. So we're going to come back to you on the 16th with the new ENA. January, we could come back with some, after talking to Mike, hopefully we have an idea as to where we stand with his latest request. Then we can also provide to you some suggestions on how you might spend the rest of your money so that you could use that as a starting point if you wanted to.
And we can, I guess we could publicize more for the community to come at these. I know this is probably the 4th or 5th study session
These are generally
had,
not very sexy or well
people
attended. It's
really don't attend these, so maybe we can have more outreach at the next one to get more people from the community.
I think that's a darn good idea, and I think to give them plenty of time and to do something, and we need to hit some of the key players in town and figure out how to really get this information out there, and maybe some kind of a press release about what it is. I mean, even simpler than Elizabeth or Mike says, but yeah, I think we need to give the opportunity for big community input, and I know you and I got big mouths. We can tell people all about the meetings, huh? We're good at that.
Yeah, we can. We need to find an avenue to give them to come to us,
Right,
to funnel
right.
them in, because
Right.
because people have a fear of coming up and speaking, and it's just it's just a general way people are. It's just a general fear that people have coming up and speaking and attending these meetings. Sometimes
Yeah.
that's why we're up there. They chose us to do it because we don't mind it. We're kind of hams.
Yeah. And we were getting,
so
weren't
we
you?
we need to make it a little more easy for people to come up to us and understand, give them an avenue so they can vent and they can give us some input as to what direction we need to go in or what is necessary for the community. Find what social, economical dynamic we need to supply housing to.
You have a social media policy now. We certainly could make a post on
Right.
Facebook, and we could tweet out requests. We could definitely put that to use. Now that we have that framework there, be a great way to do that. And if we really get our act together, maybe that message board.
I know, yeah. Because I know when the people at Tremont got notifications about campaign time, and they were very concerned about this whole, all of that changed, and they were like, oh, what are we gonna do? And some of the rents went up. Remember, they were all upset because the rents went up for the market rate, and so anyway, I'm sure all of those subsidized and those places are concerned about their future.
Could we look into that? Could you guys do some research, or could staff do some research on what the possibilities are of continuing to offset?
Specifically Section 8 housing?
Yeah. So that I just would be interested to know if we could, what that would mean, how much it would be.
Just the details
Would it be
of it.
sunsetted? And then I also think a quick win, if we could also research.
If you could just pause just for one moment, Councilmember.
Yeah.
Sorry. Elizabeth, this is to you.
Oh, sorry.
And maybe this body knows the answer to this. So Section 8 certificates are provided by LA County, right?
Yeah.
That's the body. So how much of that is confidential? Are we able to discern how many Section 8 housing units are over there?
36.
We do know that for a fact. Okay.
Well, it used to be. I'm assuming it's still the same.
Is that something that we can get, Elizabeth? Is that the type of information that I'm just trying to, because I think what you're asking for is, how big of a bread box do we have here, right? Is that what you're asking?
Well, that and could we continue with some sort of offset?
Uh-huh.
If we could, what would that entail? How long would it be?
Right, so we need to know the details of that so we could pencil that out, right? I mean,
Right.
if you have X number of monies, this is potentially how long it could last.
Right.
I'm just wondering what we're able to find out on the Section 8 certificates.
It just doesn't sit right for me to say the possibility of this new project absorbing the loss of this. I would like to add to this, not absorb this. And that housing going to fair market value does not help us in our community provide the housing we need to provide. Because if it goes to market rate, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath apartment, for example, would go upwards of $2,500, and that's not affordable for the average person in the community.
Part of that market conditions will dictate too, because you dump 30 units in Malon, you're not going to get $2,500 for
Right.
it. because
That's
this
true.
is
Right.
vacancy.
But then SK wouldn't really even have to take our proposal
Right.
either, right?
Right.
I mean, they could say, no, we've been waiting around for all these years so we could finally jack up the rates and
Yeah.
so go away.
No, that makes perfect sense. I'm just,
Yeah, no,
during this 90-day period that we're talking about research,
Yeah.
I just want to look into that.
Elizabeth, sorry, do you know anything about the availability of that part of that data?
I'm sure we'll find out the units that are there. We need to have a conversation with the landlord. It's really up to the landlord whether he would be interested in continuing to have subsidized units on the project, or if he wants to go up to market rate. We have the ability to actually extend the Section 8 program, but we could, in theory, buy down some units
Right.
from him if that was something the landlord was interested in.
Right, okay.
So we can check on that.
Okay. And then the second one, it seems as though it would be a quick win if we could research Annie's request about putting in an elevator in the senior housing, if that's a possibility. And if so, what would that entail?
So, yeah, check on the eligibility of that expenditure and then what it might potentially cost. Okay?
Thank you. Any other direction to staff?
I'm good.
Okay. And you're going to come back then, are you still going to be coming back with it?
So my thought was we
Other
come back
ideas?
in January. We
Okay.
we got a couple things. So we number one, talk to Mike about his latest numbers and go through that with him and report back to you. But then secondly, three things. Secondly, answer these questions that you have related to Section 8 and to the elevator. And then thirdly, come back to you with some potential recommendations that you guys can use as a starting point for prioritizing the spending of your money.
Okay.
That's what I would envision this meeting in
Okay.
January be.
Is it too premature on the relocation on that East Whitley property, to look at that, to do that background information on the tenants? to kind of get an answer what that would be?
Oh, yes, one of the questions to report back on is, remind me, Mayor, the question specifically was,
Well, if
whether we have to
What our
relocate
obligations would
them?
be toward
right,
the two
and
people that-
one of that might have been looking back prior to
Sure.
when they started.
I thought we'd already made that determination that we were obligated to relocate them, but we will confirm that. I thought that was already
Okay.
determined. Yes, we can bring that
Okay,
back.
or if that's the answer, just put it in there, yeah, okay.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, are you
Thank you.
complete? Yeah? Thank
All right, I'm out of here.
Thank you very much, thank you for answering all of our questions.
My pleasure. See you guys soon.
Enjoy the rain. Okay. So item number 3, is there a motion to receive and file the overview of housing?
So moved.
So moved. It's been moved to receive and file the overview of the Housing Authority law and provide direction. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, public comment? Okay, council, further comment? Call for the vote? Okay,
All eyes.
great, thank you. Is there an executive director report? That's me.
Just I guess briefly that we will come back to you to confirm the date in January that we'll be doing this, just so you
Okay.
can know that.
Thank you. Could be you. No, thank you. Housing Authority Council, anything to report?
Nope.
No? Commissioner reports? No? Okay, meeting adjourned. And now we will go back to the city council meeting.
I'll be back in a couple minutes.
We gonna take a break? We said we were gonna move right in, but
You can start without me.
Before 6, can't we?
Yeah, we can't just notice for 4.
Can't start?
Oh, yeah.
No, you
immediately
can't.
following
The
da-da-da,
only thing we
reconvene.
can't, we can go right into this agenda right now because we said it's going to start right after 4. The only thing we can't hear is the item number
6.
nuisance abatement number 6, which has to start after 6 o'clock.
okay. All righty. Did we need a small little break? No, we're good? Okay, let's go. Announcements.
I don't have any this evening, Mayor.
Okay, written communications,
None that I'm aware of.
presentations,
None this evening.
city
Let me get my
manager.
agenda, sorry.
That's
There we go.
okay, you're
Thank you.
good. City manager report,
None tonight.
city attorney report,
He has none.
council member report. And council, anything?
You want to start?
You can start.
I want to first recognize more than 45 participants last week ago Saturday for the Bobby Machado Be the Match Walk, 5K walk over town. We raised well over our goal, well over $11,000.
Wow.
Wanted to say thank you to the community and to the more than 45 local and extended Catalina family residents who went and participated in that. And then also just a note that this Saturday there will be a benefit for Bobby Sheehy. It's going to be, I believe, put together by John Eric Hernandez, so you can reach out to John Eric for further details on that. Another local resident.
Mayor, forgive me, but I did remember one thing I needed to report out to you on. This Thursday, I will be participating in the PARSEC Board of Directors meeting in Sacramento. It's an annual meeting. It's a requirement of the insurance pool that all the member cities gather to discuss claims and the year and then the strategy for the next year. So I will report out after Thursday.
That's it? Councilman Hernandez? Councilman Sampson?
I was just going to add to Cindy's, Councilman Cassidy's comment that can also reach out to Johnny Borgino. So Johnny is at the Avalon Grill, and then John Eric's handling a lot of the golf. Because there's going to be a golf tournament, probably raffle prizes, and just it's going to be a general fundraiser for Bobby and for his expenses. A great member of our community for many years, and he just needs a little bit of help right now, and we want to definitely support him. So I just want to add that.
Couple things. Saturday is the Christmas tree pickup for the community church Christmas tree sales. So it's, I think it's 8 o'clock up at the old stables. Look, no, where is it this year?
I don't know.
Old Stables? Okay, Old Stables. Also, you might have noticed that it's that dreaded time in the post office arcade. The Lions are selling raffle tickets again for the holiday drawing. The proceeds from the holiday drawing, the Lions and the Rotary donate about $3,000 a year to buy gift cards for the needy families in Avalon. So buy your tickets and win some really cool prizes. And I'm going to be attending a league reception on Thursday in Long Beach. I guess I'm representing the whole city since nobody else is going to be there.
I'm actually scheduled to go, so I'm not determined whether or not I'll be able to make it.
Okay.
Sorry.
And unfortunately, Avalon lost in the semifinal game. Didn't make it to the finals.
It was a very valiant effort that evening.
It was.
It was very good.
I want to thank everybody for showing up.
And I would like to report there will be a celebration of life for Tim Martinelli out at the Laundry at 12 o'clock on Saturday the 6th. Shop at Home night, and I don't know if you were going to talk about that a little bit. Okay, Shop at Home is this Saturday, and the lighting of the tree, I think, happens sometime at that function. Okay. Also, Breakfast with Santa is going to be on the 13th at the Big Antonio's. $5 for children, and it's a pancake breakfast. They can have their photo taken with Santa, and we give them a little token, and it's just a fun little event for everyone. And if the parents, grandparents, whoever, the other folks that show up, they can order off the regular menu. Also, Catalina Kid Ventures still has some raffle tickets left, 100-year-old raffle tickets, $100 raffle tickets for the week in Cabo. So I'll be selling those, so be sure to get those. We're going to be drawing those also on the 13th. Okay, that's all I have. Oral communication. This is where members of the community may come and address the council, give you about 3 minutes, and no action will be taken.
Kathleen Carlisle, 311 East Whitley. So a lot of those citizens that don't like to come up here and talk to you guys, they've nominated me to come up here and try to figure out how to get something done. I approached a planning commissioner after the last meeting, and I talked to him about how and why we didn't get story poles voted for the Bonds project. No, you can't vote on this right now, but the commissioner said that it was a reasonable request, and he told me it should be done prior to the appeal hearing, which there will be, as they would facilitate the discussion. And I asked him, well, how do we do it then? We've written requests to the Director of Planning. We've written requests to the Planning Commission. As far as I know, no action has been taken to put story poles up. And he said, well, go to your council members. Since this is such a hot topic and we can't really approach you guys all on the street, I'm coming to my council members. So my family and several residents want to see story poles. We want to see the actual size of this bond structure. As far as we know, there's no plan at this time. I brought photos to the Planning Commission meeting showing my estimate of how our view will be blocked, how we will be shadowed. I wasn't even able in the 3 minutes I had to show the pictures and explain to the commissioners what this line meant across it. That was my estimate of the height of the building across the street. Mr. Bratton, after the meeting, talked with me and he said, well, it's only 30 feet high. It's as high as your building. I said, no, our building is somewhere between 25 and 28, and yours is 34. And he goes, oh, I forgot about the 4 feet for the floodplain issue, which will protect bonds, but not really protect us. So I think with something this significant, and with a decision coming down where you guys are going to have to deal with this, that putting story poles up is a real fair and reasonable request. I mean, there was a house down my street where one neighbor was worried about being shadowed, and they story poled the house. So I really hope that it can be done. And I just want to say, I hope that you are not pushed through your decision-making like the Planning Commission was. I sit here and listen when Mr. Bratton jumped up and he chastised the Planning Commission for asking for some modifications to reduce delivery truck noise of the loading bay. It was just one thing on a list that Commissioner Hewitt wanted to go through one by one. He got up from his chair and he said, we've been working on this for a year and now you're asking for changes. And he seemed all indignant. Well, the first time I ever saw this from Bonds was in June. The first time we've ever been able to even address this was about a week and a half ago. So there were studies done, asked for in June. Those studies were now being able to be considered. And because of those studies, there were issues about parking and noise and all these things. But he was chastising them for asking for concessions because of some of these studies. So I just hope you don't do the same thing. And I hope that somehow, between now and the time when we have the appeal hearing, that you guys can figure out how to get that place story pulled, because asking the planning director doesn't work and asking the planning commissioner doesn't work. So I really don't know who to ask or how to get it done. And that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. We're all finished, aren't we? I'm sorry.
So we just hear that and don't comment?
Put it on the
You
agenda.
can't vote. You can't.
Okay, it wasn't a vote, but it's just
The only people that could comment on that right now would be
those two.
those two.
So there's not even a direction. That's not even possible.
Because you only have 2 members to.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
trying to.
Okay. I mean, because
Could we direct it be put on the next agenda?
You could.
The discussion of story polls?
Don't you first need to do the other?
You would have to, if in order to have a formal discussion, you have to draw straws on that request.
Okay.
Draw straws
And
just,
then-
just for that?
Yeah, if the council's going to vote on that to give direction.
For the story polls, you'd have to draw straws? and then
Because
draw straws
I'm
again?
trying to, again, I'm quickly trying to go look. No, once you draw straws for the project,
Right.
it's done. It's done.
so let's say I'm the planning department, and if I were the planning department and wanted to do everything possible with the plan, could the planning department say, you need story poles? Is that what you're looking at?
I'm trying to find the exact provision in the code.
Why don't we take a 5-minute break?
Willie, let's.
Give them a chance to look.
Okay.
Okay. Potty break? Oh, come on, Jim. You can do it.
Yeah.
So you can still like walk like.
The municipal code says that story poles are for variances, which they're for heights. That's not the case, or in a case-by-case basis as required by the planning commission. So we're going to put an item on the planning commission agenda for the 17th for the planning commission to consider the story poles. So they'll have to take a vote on that, and then that vote, if it doesn't go the way, that's appealable to the council. So on December 17th, we'll decide the story pole issue. And then that'll give us plenty of time for the appeal,
Okay.
assuming there's an appeal.
Okay. Other oral communications.
Hi, Lisa Lavelle. Just wanted to let you guys know that we will be hosting a Relay for Life in June of 2015. For those of you who are not familiar with Relay for Life, it is a fundraiser to help fight cancer and to also help provide funds for those who are battling cancer. The Relay for Life program has been going on for years, and there have been races all over Southern California for decades. But this will be the actual first one here. It's a 12-hour event. You can sign up a relay team, and that will actually be hosted at Joe Machado Field, which is great. There will be live music, food, entertainment of all sorts, and just a lot of great interaction. It really focuses on survivors as well. So we know that we have a lot of great cancer survivors in town. We're hoping that people will come out to walk for that. The website, if you want to sign up a team or participate, is relayforlife.org, and then you can just search the Catalina Island event and sign up that way. We already have a couple of teams signed up, and the goal is to raise $100 per person that walks, and then you guys actually split the walk throughout that 12-hour event between your team to help raise money. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and we'll have some more information just as the date gets closer for you. But just wanted to let the community know to kind of anticipate that for June of next year, the early part of June. So
And you can put as many people as you want on a team?
you can, yeah. It's actually really cool. Marcy Garcia, whose Uncle Manuel and Karen live on Descanso, and also Britton Bombard-Bulicki, who just got married. They both help manage events. So Marcy actually started the event in Compton, and she runs that completely. Her friend Nicole is the one that runs it for Palos Verdes. Ben Harvey's also run events previously for Relay for Life, so he's going to be a really great resource for us.
Founder of
hopefully.
the Bellflower event,
Yes,
actually.
you are.
Yeah.
Well done, sir. So we're really excited to have that happen. This is a community event, so Britton gets her, top-notch science class involved, and they actually do a 24-hour event every year in Long Beach. So hopefully this will be an event that happens every year and continues to bring people, and we're looking for community participation, we're looking for sponsorship, and we're looking for people to just get involved with it. So as we get more info and of course, as always, ask for more of the community, we'll let you guys know just exactly what those needs are, but we've already gotten a lot of people willing to help and donate and participate. So
Great, Lisa, thank you. It's a great event. Okay, no other communications? Consent calendar.
Yes, Mayor, tonight you have 4 items on the consent calendar. The first item are actions from the November 18th meeting. The second item is a request for an authorization to allow the harbor master to enter into a contract for pier piling inspections, both at the Pleasure Pier and the Mole. The third item is our desire to enter into a resolution so that we can submit for a grant with the State Department of Water Resources for a water energy program. And then last is an amendment to my contract.
Council, what's your pleasure?
I'd like to pull number 4 for discussion.
Any other items? Okay. Public comment or public polling?
Public comment on the consent calendar.
Anybody from the public like to comment on the consent calendar? Okay, is there a motion?
I'll make-
1 to 3.
There, second.
Second? Additional comment? Call for the vote. All ayes. Item number 4?
Yes, item number 4 is an amendment to my contract with you as the governing body of the City of Avalon. I've been under city employee for a little over a year now. Around the year mark, you guys, the City Council, my bosses, did an evaluation, provided me with feedback from that evaluation, and in the discussion of that, we also came to the contract which governs my employ. I requested 3 amendments to be added. One related to a transportation allowance, one related to acknowledging the custodial time I have with my children over town, and the third provision related to the use of a city vehicle. And so that's what you see here in this amendment. I'd be happy to answer any questions or clarify where you might need some additional information.
Okay, so we talked about this in a closed session, right? Correct? And what I'd like to do is, there's some things in here that I would like to discuss with the council members in another closed session. So I'd like to ask if we could possibly put this on, I'd like to hold this, this item out for further negotiations for right now, and maybe get it on the next council meeting if we can. And in the meantime, have a vote on if that's what we need to do. But I'd like to hold this item out.
Discussion?
I just had a couple of calls on this too, Ben, myself. but one of the ones that was was the cars. And then now we made it clear that it's going to be it's not just for you, it's for everybody. It's going to go out for everybody, correct? Isn't that what we said at one?
Well,
in our meeting, it was going to be everybody's going to have use of the city vehicle to go out in the hills or whatever, or usage of the city vehicle. Is that correct?
Two things, actually. So this relates only to my personal use of the city vehicle with providing for the use of gasoline. That's all this relates to. What I was directed by you guys to do, which is not contained herein, is a program wherein we could determine the allocation and use of a city vehicle, maybe by as recognition, maybe by merit for going out in the fields. And that I don't have that program in place. I've talked to our HR manager, Tiffany, about that, and I want her help in putting something like that together. And then I would bring that back for you to review and approve.
That's a very important issue. Is a very, very important clause in here. Because we have to be fair and balanced when we're dealing with our employees across the board. We need our employees at the city to understand that they're just as valuable as the next guy to their right and the next guy to their left, regardless. I think this sets a precedence. This particular item on this amendment here. So this policy has to be set in place before we can say okay to it. I have schedule, there needs to be liability. There needs to be gas, mileage, things that relate to damages. There need to be checks to the vehicles. And then there needs to be some kind of an avenue in place so that we have some kind of a way to recoup our compensations in case somebody does wreck one of our city vehicles, or they do something to it, or something happens to it, or an accident happens. Those things happen. So I just want to provide to our employees that it was important for me. That's why I brought this particular item up, that we need to provide this service to all our employees or none of them. Depending, I think we need to renegotiate this as far as I'm concerned, because I haven't seen anything move on what our policy is going to be for this particular item. And let's see. Well, there's a couple other things that we need to discuss, and I would rather discuss them in a closed session. And like this is where we had them before. We first discussed this, and that's why I'd like to bring this back and revisit this one.
And I don't know if that's a Ben's call. I mean, it's up to you whether you want us to take this into closed session or if you want us to talk about it now. It pains me, no, never mind. We'll just go for it. I think there was a little concern when people see you're observing and partaking of your custodial days, and there was a concern that was increasing your time away from the office and that kind of thing. I understand that, and I think we understood it at the time. That was clarification put in your contract of your Wednesday, Thursday situation, and that at times when you were over there, maybe instead of getting on that 10 o'clock boat to get back here at 11:30, you just as well could get that work done there without then getting up on the boat again at 3:45 and then getting on the boat again at 10 o'clock the next morning, blah, blah. And I know that your goal is to set meetings as best you can on those days when you're over there. You're not trying to make them on a Monday or making them on a Thursday or over there anyway. So that's saving.
Just trying to be efficient in the use of time. Right.
Yeah, and so I thought we all were kind of okay with that, but I think that's something to clarify to the community that they know, and that I think we were supportive of that at the time. If that has changed, I'm not aware of that. On the vehicle, I do kind of have to agree. I kind of agree with Joe about the fairness, because that is a nice perk, the vehicle in the interior. So I would say, when you're looking at policies, and I know years ago, we were all able to use city vehicles to go into the hills. And there was a calendar, and you'd schedule your time on the calendar and that kind of thing. And I know we have probably more than one vehicle capable of going in the hills. I'm not sure. I've got the smart car, and I don't know what else we have that we would use.
That'll make it.
They can't go in there. But I think that I really would like to see that when Tiffany looks at that, is look at something that is a kind of a perk to everybody. I think that seems fair and equitable. And I don't know, what was the other one? The other change was the commuter book. I don't know. I guess I can justify that in that the city employees will be getting a raise, and he's been here over a year, and he really wasn't asking for a raise. However, the price of a commuter book, I don't know, is that equal to 2% or something? It's less? Right. So, okay. Yeah, so I guess I don't have a problem with that either.
2%.
So, I don't know, Joe, if you still feel we need to do it in closed session, I think we could still vote on it with the direction being that we look at a fair and equitable system for use of city vehicles.
No, I'd like to vote on it because I think we need this policy in place if we're gonna, about the vehicle, if we're gonna go forward with this.
What, so you'd want to take that policy out until we have the provision available for
Why don't
everybody?
we move the amendment with the deletion of 1C, which is the section that covers the vehicle?
Just make sure we have all the stuff in place before anybody.
Yeah, well, we can come back
We'll come back to it later.
if we need to come back
So
to
that
it.
just creates the urgency to get it done.
For him.
Yeah.
He wants to go in the interior.
And for the employees.
So I will move to approve the amendment to Ben's contract with the removal of Amendment 1C.
Okay, the moved, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, public comment? Additional council comment?
It's fine. I mean, you know, again, I do want to talk to the HR manager about that, and so that's.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to summarily create my own policy, and so I can do that. It's fine.
Okay. All right, call for the vote.
4 ayes, Marshall, Cassidy, Hernandez, Olson, and 1 no, Councilmember Sampson.
Okay. Item 5, general business.
Yes, item 5 in our general business is a proposal for a CUP and an impact study for the reverse osmosis systems in the city of Avalon. This is an item that's going to be presented to you tonight by Dennis, your interim public works director. This is a proposal from Environment Strategies. One of our concerns, as you probably know, is the desire and the potential proliferation of reverse osmosis systems in homes and the impact to the sewer and the wastewater treatment plant. So we need this to allow us to better understand what we're potentially getting into. But Dennis, again, is here, and he can expound on this a little bit better than I'm able to. So Dennis?
Good evening. We've been approached by several residents and hotel owners. And as we all know, during phase 2 water rationing, private desalination units would help us out considerably. We have some preliminary work to do, however. We have to do a study at the treatment plant to make sure the excess salinity in brine is going to be acceptable. We anticipate it is. What's before you tonight is to complete that study, but also to come up with a conditional use permit. It's going to be conditional. We're going to allow these units to place the brine into the system, go to the sewer treatment plant, and we're also going to develop a fee for each unit that's in place throughout the city. So that's what the study is about. There's a considerable amount of work to be done. Environ Strategies is the right person to do it. As you all know, they're there, and they're well aware of our system and how it works. And this is something that we highly suggest that we implement so that we can get going on some decel units here on the island. Any questions?
Questions?
Isn't the problem actually the handling of the wastewater at our sewer treatment plant as it is, with the amount of the salt content that's going in there already? I mean, isn't that a huge problem for us right off the bat? I mean, before we even start doing this?
It is a problem. It is a problem. But that's what the study's about. We can probably handle more. We feel it's probably advantageous to restrict water usage in the end result by having decel units in the household.
We already have desalination units in town that we're not charging for, correct?
We are aware of a few that were implemented without our approval.
Okay.
And we're under the process now to determine who those people are, and we're going to deal with them accordingly.
It's my understanding that our sewer treatment plant is operating at 95% capacity right now. Do we really want to go higher than that?
I didn't know it was that high.
I don't think,
I don't
that's not what
believe
the ES has been telling us, Joe, so I don't know.
That's what they've told me. 85 to 95% capacity. Is there anyone from Environmental Strategies here?
No.
We could sure get that verified tomorrow.
Okay, maybe we should.
Maybe
because I think it's hard to make a decision based on the fact that I've been told one thing, and that is peak summertime usage. Okay, so
the other thing that I should bring up at this point is that we are looking to enter into an agreement with Mr. Flynn to install some duckbill flaps along the front of town to prevent the intrusion of salt water, which will increase available capacity.
And that was about 150,000, 200,000 gallons a day, Joe. It would reduce that salt that's going in there just straight from the ocean right now that's with no effluent in it. Yeah, so it would decrease that.
Right. So that's a parallel path that we're moving down at the same time, and you will see the covenant that we're proposing with Mr. Flynn shortly, maybe as early as the next meeting.
Right. And how long are they thinking this to prep this and get all this? Or is there a timeline, kind of?
4 to 5 weeks.
Oh, okay.
this is just a study to tell us exactly what the repercussions of doing this would do to the system.
That's going to be involved in the study. It's anticipated that we're going to be able to handle it.
Yeah, I imagine if Environmental Strategies, which I'm reading that they're okaying this and they're jumping on board with this, I imagine it's something that they think is doable. But when I spoke to Dave this a few months ago, and I was at the sewer treatment plant, he says we're operating at almost maximum capacity during the summertime. So, but I think we need to control how many people set up their desalination systems in their backyard. Because I've spoke to several contractors that are thinking of setting up small units for people and providing a service here in town.
Yes.
So people that own houses can go ahead and set up their own units. I'm not sure if that's a great idea. I think.
Well, this is that's one of the things this study is going to do, is develop a permit for desal units, and whether the city allows them or not, it's going to give us an avenue to decline their permit. We have to remember, along with this study, is the infiltration of 200,000 gallons a day of salt water should stop, and that's going to help allow us to put more desal units in.
Yeah, I'd like to see that happen before we okay this project. But if this is a study and we just need to understand what we're dealing with, I can go ahead and agree with that. But there's no way that I would say that's a good idea to start putting in more desalination units in Avalon without understanding how we're going to process the byproduct.
That's what's supposed to be accomplished with the study, unfortunately.
So I commend Mike for donating those, or if it's a donation, I don't know if it's a donation or not, but for coming up with a remedy to that intrusion that we're getting from the Front Street.
Yeah, I believe you'll discuss that a little later on this evening, the covenant.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Can we put a moratorium on anybody bringing new diesel units in town?
They can't do them right now because they need a permit.
It's not permitted currently.
You basically need a discharge permit to do that.
So all the people that have them, when we find out who they are, then there's something.
The goal is to develop a permit and then go after those that we know have them.
Okay. Oh,
Right, because we don't have any idea what type of units they are, what their output is. I mean, it's all unknown to us.
Okay.
Oh, I see. So that explains it a little more, what we're dealing with here.
And then any new units, of course, would then be subject to that permit too. You'd have to submit the cut sheet for what you're looking to install, and we can study it and we can determine and so forth. And then there are fees with that too, because there's going to be impact to the infrastructure.
So we can't go ahead and start charging these people right off the bat that already have these units in their homes.
No,
we can require them to get the appropriate discharge permit.
But we're developing the permit.
It's a little bit more complex than that because the discharge permit is actually something that the state has authority over. So our permit will encompass getting the discharge permit into the sewer treatment plant, which ultimately discharges into other places. And so you have to get a state permit for this. You have to get a permit to discharge into our sewer system.
Weren't we trying to remedy this by coming up with a large-scale desalination system at Edison so that we don't have to deal with this kind of thing, and then everybody can just use fresh water, reclaimed water, and we have plenty of it? I mean, we're dealing with a real old system out there. Maybe we can come up with some kind of grant and we can help Edison. I mean, this multi-billion-dollar company, maybe we can lend them some money so they can re-up on their desalination plant, because God knows it's like pulling teeth trying to get them to do this. I mean, I would like to see it done, even if we have to come up with the money ourselves and have our grant writers, design a more efficient system. Isn't this where we're going with this, or are we really going to try to small time this?
No, we're pursuing multiple options right now, and one of the council goals is to pursue additional freshwater resources. So, in fact, you guys just approved a resolution for us to enter into a grant application for a little demonstration desal unit, and we are talking to Edison about that, and Edison has been approached, and they are interested in participating with us in grant opportunities. They do control the water rights, and so we do have to go with them into these type of pursuits. But we're not just doing one, we're doing lots of things. Great. We understand that's a council priority.
Yeah, I want to remedy the problem for the whole town, and if we can, into the future. I mean, with all these plans we're getting to grow our community, we need to remedy this. And yeah, working with Edison, awesome. Even if they own the water, they can own the water. We just need to have enough of it so we don't reach these problems 5 years down the road. Kicking the can down the road. I don't want to be the city council that kicks the can down the road for another 5 years, okay? So that's just what I'm saying.
Excellent.
All right, I'm done there.
And what's the pleasure of the council? We've discussed.
I'll make a motion to approve the proposal and direct staff to enter into an agreement with Environ Strategies.
Been moved and seconded? I mean, it hasn't been moved, or is it second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Any other public comment? Council, call for the vote.
All ayes.
Item number 6.
Okay, item number 6, we're going to need to get another attorney on the phone because this is a procedural issue where we're declaring a particular property in town a nuisance abatement property. And so your city attorney has to switch, and we're going to have the prosecuting attorney join us on the phone.
Actually, no, I'm the prosecuting attorney.
Excuse me, I flip-flopped that around.
Our office has been working with staff to do the staff reports, to do the studies, and all that. So because of that, because in this matter, I'm wearing the prosecutor's hat, the city has under contract Ken DePere, and all he does is code enforcement advice. And so he would be advising you as your city attorney on this particular item. If you have any questions about the procedures, whether the procedures were followed correctly, etc. So we're going to patch him in here, and I think Amanda and or Brian will be delivering the report.
That's right. Yeah.
Campbell, how are you?
Quite well, thank you, Ken. I've got you on the speakerphone with the Avalon City Council.
Excellent. Mayor Marshall and council members, good evening. And I am actually watching you on the live stream. One of 7 people watching, so keep it easier.
1 of 7?
So do we want to have Brian come up to give you a little background on this property? He's here, or Amanda? Gotcha. Thank you, Amanda.
They got my name on
We are this evening are requesting permission to move forward with public nuisance abatement at 215 Clarissa. We're all familiar with this home. It's down there on the 200 block of Clarissa. We get a lot of comments about this. This project has a very long and varied history. I went and pulled out a file, and we actually sent them their first letter in 2006. We would hear from them, and then we wouldn't get any action, and we would send them another letter, and we would hear from them, and they would sound like they were going to come do work, and then we wouldn't hear from them for a long time. So finally, with the assistance of the city attorney's office, we stepped into the official process mode, and where you have to go through certain steps to reach this point where we're asking you to actually declare it a public nuisance, and which gives the city authority to move forward and either clean up or abate it or fix it or do something with the property so it's not the eyesore that it has been downtown. I think what we're asking you to do is actually make the finding that it is a public nuisance under our municipal code, and to direct the city manager and staff to take the appropriate actions to abate the nuisance. And then we would be requesting reimbursement of any of those costs. I don't believe we're actually asking for permission to demolish the structure, but to at least perhaps board it up and secure it and clean it up so it's not a threat to public safety. So I think that's kind of where we are. You've got pictures of the property. I think we all know where the property is. So if you have any questions, Brian and I are both here.
So you go and you do this, you do whatever work you feel is appropriate to do, and you're then requesting the homeowner to reimburse the city for those costs. And if that doesn't happen, then what? File a lien?
Lien it.
Put a lien on the property.
You want to come to the podium, Brian? I'm sure there'll be some other questions.
Yeah, I've been involved in things like this in Riverside and San Bernardino County, and what we generally would do is go in, clean the property up, make it look presentable, secure it so no one can get into there, and then we would put a lien on the property, like a notice of pendency. Am I using the right language, Scott?
It's a lien, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't give us any money.
Well, we can actually, one of the options is the type of lien can be against their property taxes. So when they get their property tax bill, there's a little line there for the city of Avalon.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And that lien sticks with the title, with the deed. So
Until they sell it.
So they couldn't actually proceed with the finalization of a sale until that lien is
Until it's clear.
released.
Rather nice place. I've been through it a bunch of times.
Have you?
It's a big lot.
We took the meters off it before at Edison. We've done that. We pulled that. I've been in and out of that place. Should have been done years ago.
And currently the meters are disconnected. The part that was falling down is shored up.
Yep.
But, it's not adequate.
It's definitely unsafe.
So you board up the windows or whatever, and you take away the weeds, and those will come back. And then do we put a fence in the front, because it's still going to be an eyesore? I mean, we're not painting it and putting new fascia on it, right?
It's our hope that once we start to do things, that the property owner will finally start to work with us on it, because we're actually now have the power to do it ourselves.
Okay.
And so part of this is our strategy was to come and declare it a nuisance, which gives us a little bit more power to take things under our own control in our hands, and then that will hopefully force the property owner to do it themselves.
Okay.
This is a thing of last resort. Again, we've tried to work for years with this, and it's not working. And so we've been, I think, very reasonable, if not over reasonable. And now we're just saying, give us the power to take the next step to be able to clean it up and make it safe with our forces. Charge the homeowner any cost, and hopefully before it comes to that, they'll clean it up themselves.
Could this place ever be rented?
Oh
No.
No.
Not in its current condition.
6 bedrooms.
So
5
we're
bedrooms.
gonna clean it up. It's a liability. It's a nuisance. It's a hazard. It's a problem. It's an eyesore. Do the owners, did they not converse with the city about this? Have we had any communications whatsoever?
Oh, plenty, yeah. They came in and brought in plans for repair.
Oh.
For years.
They were plan checked, and the permit was issued, and they never acted on the permit.
So it's never been done. What maybe this is something we can put on our housing list, and maybe we can help them fix it up and rent it out.
It is a double lot, so.
It's huge. It's great. It'd be a neat little house, a neat big house with the yard. If we could get it fixed up, but it's just not. It's not going to happen, right?
I don't believe so. It's just a lot of stalling, and Ben and I and the contractor met with her, and just
A lot of empty promises.
Yeah, exactly. I got a few letters in mine.
So we've exhausted all of our abilities to reach out to these people.
Oh, I think we've more than bent over trying to just do this.
I'm glad I wasn't in on that negotiation. People bending over.
So Brian, I'm sorry, Joe, you did? I'm sorry.
No, it's good. Go ahead, sir.
So cleanup, you're just talking about just to get some of that weed abatement on the front and just secure it so nobody goes in it? Is that what we're basically talking about?
well, it needs a roof. The roof is
Oh, yeah,
sliding off
right.
and falling into the road.
It's half in the living room and
Yeah, the fascia board.
Right.
Yeah.
I've been in there.
Yeah, you know what I mean. And the weeds growing through the floors.
I do.
But basically just the outside.
Okay, just secure it up and, okay.
Yeah.
So it's a fire hazard too.
Yep.
And all the things that are mentioned on here. Why can't we just level it and then so it's not a hazard anymore? So it's a lot. And
So we have to go through a certain due process, and it's owned by a particular family or individual. So you have to march through the.
they need to give you the okay to do that then.
Well, no, we could do that, but we decided at this point, we think that we can, if they refuse to, that we can remedy it so that it's not falling and not posing a hazard to anyone. If we go in there and we start to do work and it just turns out that it can't, then we come back to you with the nuisance abatement to actually demolish it. But we're not seeking that tonight.
We thought that would be a harsh first official procedural step to also go from 0 to
0 to 60 in 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for that work you've done on this, sir, Brian. I appreciate it. Yeah, appreciate your tolerance. Trying to reach out. Amanda, thank you for what you guys.
Chief. Yes, I have. Maybe I get the fire department to go over and drill on it.
Yeah.
I don't think Chief Craig can put his men up against that. It's kind of dangerous as it is.
When I first came here, it was posted. Didn't you and Ronnie post it?
Yep.
And they took
3
it down.
times. They took it down and talked to Edison and got the meters put back in, and it was a whole shenanigan deal. But I've been there several times. It is very dangerous in there.
Okay. Community comment? Pleasure of the council
Motion?
to adopt the resolution.
Move to adopt the resolution of the Avalon City Council declaring 215 Clarissa Avenue a public nuisance and directing abatement of the nuisances.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, move to second. Further comment? Call for the vote.
All ayes.
Item number 7.
Thank you, Ken.
Yes, thank you very much.
He's only there in case you had, you wanted to check him against what I was saying. I was being the evil prosecutor that time. I was not putting on my fair and balanced hat.
Item number 7, yes, this is the consideration, the prioritization, and the authorization of 3 proposals for grant funding through the MTA through their call for projects process. We have identified 3 in the pedestrian category, Five Corners, Tremont pedestrian improvement, and the Southeast Avalon Canyon pedestrian project. We are asking for you to review, to prioritize, or concur with what we presented to you as a priority, and authorize our spending of approximately $15,000 in order to get these updated. The drawings and the calculations were done a few years ago. They need to be dusted off before we submit them. Audra has done the work on this, and she would be happy to give you additional information.
Good evening, Council.
Good evening.
Any questions? I had the mayor ask me a question about the categories that are in the call for projects, which was actually a really good question. So I wanted to take a minute to explain what the categories are and why we've chosen just to apply or are requesting to apply in the PED mode only for this call for projects. The call for projects has 7 modal categories. Regional surface transportation funds capital improvements on regionally significant arterials, which are main highways. We did just get our roads functionally classified, so maybe in the future that may be something that we could apply in, but I don't feel right now that we have anything identified that would be good. Good movement improvements is mode 2, which funds construction of capital improvements for truck routes and major freight corridors. The 710 often gets money through the call. Signal synchronization and bus speed improvements. We don't have any signals, thank goodness. Transportation demand management funds increased use of high occupancy vehicle lanes, transit carpooling, van pooling, and reduced and the goal to reduce the number of single occupancy vehicle trips. It's also to help encourage the use of alternate transportation modes, walking, biking. But it's kind of a hard one for us to apply in. Bike improvements, this fund bikes improvement projects. In this call, the priority projects are bikes to transit, which are projects that improve bicycle improvements that facilitate biking to transit stations, complete bikeway networks, on and off bike projects that complete and fill gaps in neighboring jurisdictions, which really wouldn't apply to us because we're our only jurisdiction. There's some other bike categories, but we don't really have an identified project right now for a bike program that I felt that would be competitive. So we have received bike money in the past. Mount Ada, so Wrigley Terrace Road, all those improvements were bike money, believe it or not. And there was also some bike money used in Avalon Canyon. Pedestrian improvements funds pedestrian improvements that develop infrastructure and environment that support walking, reduce trips in other modes by increasing the frequency and distance that people will walk, and it improves pedestrian safety. And then the final category is transit capital that increase the frequency or capacity of an existing bus service, and then projects that include clean fuel bus acquisitions and bus stop improvements. And as you are aware, we received money through the call of about $1 million in 2012, and that's the money that will be purchasing our e-buses. So the 3 projects before you are projects that have had a lot of thought put behind them over the years. Some of them have been grant funded, and then the grant funding after design, it was determined was not adequate for the project. The cap for each project is $3 million in this category, so we've decided that it might be best to apply for the 3 separate PED projects that staff has identified as important and probably would be competitive, because the total project, if you put all 3 together, would probably exceed the $3 million max. We're requesting that you prioritize the Five Corners intersection as the #1 priority. In your attachments, there were lots of drawings. We are asking that the Wildan proposals be, we went to Wildan because they're the ones that originally prepared the drawings, and it would be the least expensive way to cost value the project. And I think that's about it.
And is it paid for out of current MTA monies, or does this come out of general fund or somewhere else? How do we pay this 14?
So the match would be general fund money. The first year that this, if we were awarded, the first year that we'd be even eligible to start spending money would be 2017. We will know by probably July if we were funded, so that would give the city an opportunity to then build up the reserve, build up the match. Also, it's important to note that they inflate the grant amount to the year that you actually start receiving the funding. So if say that the grant was $3 million, that's what you got, they would inflate that
right
to the 2017, right, which is what they did for the bus purchase.
But were you speaking to the engineering contract?
Exactly.
Request? Okay, that's general fund money.
Yes. Okay. It can't come out of MTA money?
No, it can't.
Since we're applying through them?
So pay some to hopefully, it's like you got to purchase a lottery ticket in order to be eligible to win.
I understand that concept.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
So these are going to be 50% grant monies?
No, they're 80-20.
80-20?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we got to come up with 600,000 in 2017.
Yeah.
Well, if you're going to apply for all of them, then there's no reason for us to say priority, right?
We just want, if you're only awarded one of them, they're going to take your #1 priority. There's no guarantee, if I understand this correctly, that you're going to get all 3.
No, absolutely
Right.
not. So they require in the grant application that if there's a question, a specific question, if you're applying for more than one project in this mode, you need to prioritize it as an agency. What's your most important? What's your second? What's your third? So as the staff did, we prioritized them, but we need you to either concur or to change the prioritization. Because that'll kind of drive the train if they decide they're only going to give Avalon one grant. Which grant is it going to be?
So staff's identified Five Corners as the primary, Tremont pedestrian second, and
Avalon Canyon
third.
sidewalk, yes.
Why wouldn't you put Avalon Canyon in front of Tremont?
The thought was that even though it's not ideal, there already is a sidewalk on Avalon Canyon for a portion of it versus Tremont, which has none at all. So that was the rationale, but we can, again, this is your direction. If you'd like to flip-flop them, you're not going to hurt our feelings.
Well, does that southeast Avalon Canyon Road even kind of fit in a little bit to the Five Corners as well? Because
everything fits into the Five Corners. I mean, it all.
Well, the pedestrian not quite as much to me, but
The Five Corners doesn't.
No, the Five Corners and the Avalon Canyon seem like those fit in because because you got a stop sign right here on Avalon Canyon right before a driveway.
Well, Tremont's right there too. I mean, they're all.
Yeah, Tremont, it's right there.
I know, but the pedestrian improvement is along Tremont, right?
It'd be over the flood channel. So
It'll drop into Avalon Canyon. It'll drop in right in Five Corners.
Right.
Because right now, anybody that's walking from that side of town, if they're coming up to Tremont, then there's no sidewalks.
Yeah.
If they get to this intersection, they can cross the street and get to a sidewalk.
Yeah. I guess I'm curious, which is more of the safety issue. Five Corners definitely safety, but when it comes to the other two, which is the
Well, that was our thought.
Biggest
Our thought was it's annoying, but you can at least cross the street and go up that way.
Pedestrian safety.
Exactly. So that, but again, if you want to differ with that, that's
You can swap them around easily. I mean,
it's fine.
Now, did you say they're gonna have to revise some of these plans? Is that what we're
yeah. So, well, not really revise them. Dust them off a little bit. Ben, that was a very good.
They've expired, if you will. The shelf
Yeah,
life.
they're too old. And one of the main things that Wildan will do is they'll cost it out so that when we're applying for the grant, we're not guessing. We're really using some actual numbers, which is important because what really happened in the last time we were funded for the Five Corners intersection is it was a very loose estimate on what it would cost. And I think the grant that we received for that was about $500,000, and it came in way over $1 million in like 2006, if you recall. So we want to make sure that we have really good numbers when we put the grant together, and because they look at those things too.
And when is the deadline to apply?
It's January 16th, I think.
So Wilden can do all this work?
Yeah, they're fully aware of
get everything going out.
Well, they still have the drawings in their computers. I was able to give them the little numbers, and they were able to pull it
I mean,
off.
are you having to do a lot of creation of the RFP? Are you involved a lot in, or do they have everything that's going to need to go on the RFP?
No, oh, you mean in the grant application?
In the grant,
all the language will be done by me. Some of the language will be repetitive though, because some of the answers to the questions will be the same. I mean, the goal will be the same, which is pedestrian safety, creating additional pedestrian facilities that don't exist.
Right.
So some of the stuff will be the same, some of the stuff will be different.
I mean, this is something that's doable between now and January?
Oh, I've already started working on it.
Oh, okay. I mean, it is a lot of work.
It is.
Yeah. Okay, that's great.
Do we need to do any construction work on our flood canal back here before we put the walkway on top of it?
I think that would be all part of the project. That would all be part of it. If it was awarded, all of that would be handled. It would have to. You couldn't just put something on top of it without, figuring out all implications of what that would be.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Is that our property, where
Yeah.
that channel is?
It is.
Right where the wall is down by Tremont? That plain there, that's our property?
us.
Goes all the
Yes.
way down to Clementi?
Mhm.
Yep, so that is ours.
It is.
Oh,
But it comes back from the backside of Tremont.
Yes.
It goes underneath, right?
Mhm.
would the,
And that's I think one of the design issues with that intersection too, is that slope.
Mhm.
You know how it's not a flat surface.
It goes-
Yeah. So, and I think that's one of the reasons that when this came in, when this costed out, it was a lot more money because of those pieces of it as well.
so the walkway would could potentially go down to Clementi, correct?
Yes.
And then we'd have some wheelchair, some handicap access as
Would
well?
have to, yeah.
Somewhere relieved
It would
at the
probably
end of the
be-
streets, maybe?
I don't know because I'm not the designer.
Okay.
But I would assume that you would at least need one ADA access point, probably Clarissa on one end of it, because then you could access it ADA accessible in the intersection here.
Yeah, that would be neat if people coming up from the town could access that from maybe one or two streets.
I think the plans
Yeah,
call out for the ADA ramps in them.
yeah, that would be real people friendly and handicap friendly, which is
Yes.
something we need. Skateboard friendly.
Okay, well, council, what's your pleasure? Public comment? Oh, yes, Nate.
Hi, Kathleen Carlisle, 311 East Whitley. The prioritization of that, the Five Corners is great, but don't go for Avalon Canyon over Tremont, because Avalon Canyon has, some sidewalk markings. Tremont has nothing. And if you go there before school or after school, every kid is walking outside those parked cars. And visitors that are going up the canyon, they're all walking right there. That is a horrible safety hazard. You can get to Five Corners, and it's messy, but you can figure out how to get across. There's crosswalks. I would even put Tremont over Five Corners, but I don't know how the funding would work for that, if it's more likely to get funding for Five Corners. So that's my.
Thank you. Other comment? Council, what's your pleasure?
I've heard the arguments for keeping the order as it is, with Five Corners being first, Tremont being second, and Avalon Canyon being third. And there's 3 resolutions?
Yes.
Instead of reading, I'll read one of the resolutions. Move the 3 resolutions. A resolution of the City Council, City of Avalon, approving the submittal of an application for funding to construct the Southeast Avalon Canyon pedestrian project, the Five Corners project, and the Tremont project through the County of LA County Metropolitan Transit Authority to 2014 call for projects process.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Further comment? Call for the vote.
All ayes.
Alrighty, item number 8.
Yes, item number 8 is back. This is an ordinance where we're proposing to add a chapter to the municipal code regarding administrative citations and penalties. You'll recall that you gave this a first reading back in October. We brought it back for a second reading, and then there was some public comment and discussion and a desire to clarify what the city's intention was with this, and so the city attorney has done that. Essentially, this is giving you additional options. It's adding that section to the code so that you can actually pursue things in a non-criminal manner. We don't yet have the list of those municipal code infractions that we would be pursuing specifically. We will bring that back should you decide to add this to the code. Our recommendation is to pursue those that are building and code related first, but certainly there are other sections of the code that would well fall in this category. So Scott, do you have anything additional you'd like to add on this one?
Other than I have personally spoken with Captain Federal, Brian, and code enforcement, and Judge Mirich about this, and everyone is universally in support of this and believe it would be a good thing for Avalon. It'd be another tool for the city to have to enforce its code. Doesn't replace criminals, not going to lessen criminal prosecution. It's going to be allow us to go after people that violate the code. Especially, we're looking at initially, at least, building in, for instance, maybe nuisance abatement issues like pet nuisance and stuff like that. And again, as we go along, something may come up, and the council can direct us to devote resources to other nuisances or to other problems. This just gives us more tools in the toolbox.
Saves us money too, doesn't it?
It will. Well, it will. What it will happen is it will probably result in some increase in revenues coming in from the fines. In addition to that, if there's ever an instance when the city attorney's office is involved, the violator pays for it, not the city. Right now, the city pays for that. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to actually lessen the cost that the city incurs.
The attorney fees, the cost of
attorney fees, yeah.
Right.
So it's going to increase revenue and should reduce your cost. And hopefully have the city be cleaner and more in compliance with your codes and safer.
Is this the one where we're talking about reimbursement too for the person?
The timing of, one of the questions I think was the timing of the reimbursement.
Yeah, the timing of the reimbursement. Is that the one?
Well, that would be the practical.
Wasn't it that it took them 6 months to get their reimbursement back?
We have up to 60 days, but the council's direction was that if we actually take one of these cases,
right,
and we lose it, for instance, that we'll refund those on the next pay process. So we're going to do that very, very quick. This sets the deadline for when it is, but we understand council's direction is that if we have to reimburse it, the next time the checks are cut, that goes out.
Okay.
It's been stated. Okay.
So, Scott, yourself and Captain Federal are working on a list, as I understand it, that will help determine what these items are that will...
It's not just Captain
Specifics.
Federal, it's actually city staff, Brian. I've even had conversations with Judge Mirich, and I'll probably see him if he's in on December 19th to talk to him about his take on this, because these would be enforced if they had to go to court. He'd be enforcing these in small claims actions.
I just would like that information to be public. And then, as I understand it, the piece that muddied me before has been clarified. And as I understand it to be crystal clear, we incur the costs here in town. Our code enforcement, our law enforcement, whatever that person may be. And if we agree to this and adopt this, then that revenue will come back into our community rather than go over town. And that's the benefit, one of the benefits of doing this.
If we pursue things civilly, yes.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, I asked them too, but because they're gonna be directed at building code and public nuisance violations, but what other stuff is there?
Right.
Not knowing all the municipal code to
Right.
what would be, yeah.
And again, what our experience has been with this in other cities is something will happen in a city that maybe is not on anyone's radar, and all of a sudden it becomes a priority. And this, with having this in place, it allows us to immediately start enforcing it if it's not being enforced, because you have a lot of laws here, and it's very difficult for us to enforce all of them. But this gives us the ability, if something comes up, to quickly go after it.
So if we wanted to put our own water no lists in our Avalon Municipal Code, and then...
You could do that. You already have some provisions in the code that prohibit certain uses or abuses, or no, it's a misuse. Not an abuse, it's a misuse.
But to the mayor's point, this is taking your code and deciding what parts that you want to have enforced here.
Right.
But not the vehicle code and other.
Right. We're not gonna be given track. Okay. Public comment? Council?
Motion.
He's making a motion to adopt the ordinance?
Adopt the ordinance, the Avalon's adding Title 1, Chapter 9 to the Avalon Municipal Code relating to the administration of citations, penalties, and adding enforcement provisions to the Avalon Municipal Code.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, motion and a second. Further comment? Call for the vote.
All ayes.
Item number 9.
Okay, yes, item number 9 is the proposed adoption of Phase 2 of the City Council goals. Way back in August, in the goal-setting session, you embarked upon the second set of council goals. We brought them back for your review and consideration in October. I believe that we did that a bit hastily in that, and looking at the goals at that time, they were not what we would deem SMART. Let me remind myself what that stands for. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-specific. They were lacking in that area. To refresh your memory, we have a goal of enhancing recreation opportunities, including the Avalon Amphitheater and a community center, Joe Machado Field, and senior activities. You have a goal category of city infrastructure, including the mole, the cease and desist order, and then a category of city policy, including organizational and staff development, subsidy program, greater community cooperation, the Avalon 2030 vision, and updating the code. So we went through, we did our best to try to make these as smart as we could. If you'd like to ask questions or tweak any of these, we would welcome that. The next step would be to publish a comprehensive list of all your goals, make it available on the website, of course, distribute it to staff and the public, As you probably have noticed, we're trying to align every single council agenda item with a goal. And if you don't have a goal that goes with the item, there are going to be times when it's logical and appropriate, but there are hopefully times when you maybe stop for a moment, scratch your head and say, is this really something that we should be doing? This isn't consistent with what we said our goals are. So, got a lot of help from Jordan on this item. Either one of us would be happy to answer your questions about any of these.
Council comment?
The only thing I didn't see in here, and
I'm
excuse
sorry.
me.
Councilman, no,
She was asking me a question.
Okay, is the walkway out to Pebbley Beach, and that would be Pebbley Beach Road, but I kind of understand that we kind of put that on the back burner.
No, that was phase
No,
one.
that's phase one.
That's actually on the front burner.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Okay, great.
And Councilmember Sampson, so what we'll do is we will, because I think this is part of the confusion, we will develop this comprehensive list.
This number 2 then?
This is
Yes.
the second.
Okay,
list.
okay.
Yeah.
That's right.
But you're not the first person that's asked this question. What, didn't we already do this or that's because we did it in two pieces? So it's a totally valid question. And we'll have a comprehensive list everybody can see.
There's all those other ones that we.
In that case, this looks great. This is really good work, Jordan.
I have a couple of
Ben?
comments, though. The community center, I guess a couple of things. I'm curious to know who's going to be assigned these, what the team is with each of these, because these are very ambitious goals between now and June. And I don't know, perhaps you've gone through that dialogue and you have it in your own head, but I would like to see who's going to be responsible for this, these items. I'm a little concerned about the community center being on now because number one, community center site, if the only piece of property right there is that one, and we're negotiating with the island company, there is no water on that site. So that's something that I don't see the urgency to, also without a needs assessment on that, and you know, because I mean, you're finding more and more activities and that kind of thing, that's awesome. And right now we seem to be finding places for everything relatively okay. It's kind of a pain, I'm sure. But I don't know that we know what we want in the center. I don't know the size of it or anything. So I would think there's a lot of other things going on that might not need our attention immediately. I know we all want a center, but you know, if we do a thing with Mike, there was the whole thing about putting a center on the second floor of Catalina Kid Ventures. I've already said that before. So I don't know. And then there's also the funding for something like that, so I don't know or just put a different date on it.
Yeah, as a suggest two things. So number one, the fortunate thing for the city staff or those that fall within that department's purview, those are where those goals are kind of moving. So obviously, enhanced recreation opportunities would go to Jen and her team. I mean, of course, I'm going to be involved in all of these.
Of course.
And for example, somebody like Audra might be involved in all of these as well, because we always want to try to see if we can pursue a grant opportunity that helps us with the goal. There may be legal questions on some of these as well, you know, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Those that relate to infrastructure, probably Public Works. And also, those that relate to the harbor would involve the harbor master and his department too. But you can certainly modify any of the dates if you think that they're too ambitious or you've got some questions, and or you can add additional criteria you'd like us to hit as part of that goal. It's all fun.
Okay. Well, when one of the back goals is community cooperation, that's a smart goal. However, there's no SMART to it. We're to continue to establish and reestablish professional relationships with many stakeholders, blah, 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 blah. Okay. That is a big one, because I think that then fits into B, community center, and A, amphitheater, and other stuff. You know, I mean, they seem really related, so.
On that particular one, what I would say, the reason why there's no time established on that is because it's something we do already. And we just want to remind ourselves that's important. This really, you know, I think you've heard me preach this many times. We're on an island. There's only so many people here. Dislike or like, you're going to have to work with everybody in order to accomplish your goals. And so we all city staff all tries to do this, I think, in everything that we
Well, I would
are
be
working on.
curious to see what is measurable.
Well, it's a little squishy as well, because how do you determine really if you have an effective, a professional relationship? I don't know. I mean, that's harder to.
I mean, that is a huge important one. And I think we as a council need to figure that out with you as well, because I know you're the lead on a lot of this stuff out there, which is fine. But however, then there's the rest of us, and how we continue. You know, I mean, everybody probably has their pets out there in the community, but how is that really making things gel? I don't know that it makes it gel so much.
Mm-hmm.
It's real vague to me.
Well, perhaps as a suggestion, maybe you add in a date where council reviews key relationships in the community and on the island, and you make a determination in your professional opinion if that one's working or not working, and if we need to.
Or then you tell us, okay, what do we do establish and how do we reestablish professional relationships? Is that just getting on the telephone? Or is there something more to that, or taking people to dinner? I mean, you know, how do we develop community? This is so huge to everything.
I've got some I've got some ideas I could add to that as to what I do when I try to establish relationships, and maybe if I could, if you want me to, I can peel that one out. And put
I mean,
things in
you know what I mean? It's you know, somebody's invited to this meeting, somebody's invited to that meeting, and then blah, 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 and then where is the coming back and saying, and this is, like, I know we taxed you with telling us when you have these meetings, what was the upshot of those meetings and those kinds of things. And so that we're all kind of either on the same page or not on the same page, we need to know where we are. And the only times that those things can be discussed is here. Mm-hmm. You know, so those kind of dialogues are gonna have to happen here, because the one-on-one thing doesn't sometimes work very well.
We need a follow-up, basically.
Yeah, and meetings that need to be done. It's just the ongoing dilemma that I have with planning anything. We can't plan anything without full cooperation, and Jordan's gonna say something, and really figuring this out, because I don't know how we can ever go forward unless it's like playing a little chess game. And I don't know why that has to be a chess game.
Well, I can tell you just quickly on that topic, what I always try to do, and I tell people that is a good starting point, is you always focus on what's within the concentric circle, right?
Exactly.
You understand what that particular organization or agency or individual's priorities or mission is, and you see where you overlap. And you have to discard those parts that are outside, because you know that there's going to be times when you don't align, and you really can only look at where you come together.
Right. Well, I know we've discussed it. I mentioned it to Ann Muscat. I even mentioned it to Randy Harrell. How do we sit in a room and do those concentric circles? Mm-hmm. You know, until we know
Well, perhaps maybe then, this is a good point, we could sit down and discuss, hey, what are your goals? What is your mission? What is your vision? Oh, okay, here's ours. Oh, it looks like we've got several that are aligned. What projects do we have that are within those areas? What do we not have?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, Council, am I just talking to myself?
No, I feel as though this goal is an awkward goal on its own. This community cooperation should be a factor in every single goal that we have.
Yes.
Every single project we go after, every single move that we make needs to have community cooperation. And whether it be working with the Conservancy on one project, working with the Island Company on another, or at least, you know, bringing everybody together at a table for different projects that we're working on, it seems awkward as a goal, because each of the 5 of us have different relationships with the community.
Right. How about this as a stab
so,
then? You know, one thing we don't have is an overarching mission or values. Perhaps this is more of a value. You value community cooperation, and we can establish, and not to bore you with another exercise, but you know, I can certainly come up with some things that I think are values that we should encapsulate in everything that we do, and this would be one of them.
Well, just because, like, the Avalon 2030 vision, to me, again, that should have been on top of all of these goals, you know, because you have your overall vision, just like you have your overall values, and these things fall under that. So the sooner we can get work on how, I don't know, this is probably gonna be a Jordan thing, the Avalon 2030 vision, so that it's our guiding light, you know, to me anyway. Were you gonna say something, Jordan?
I just wanted to point out one means of measurability for community cooperation is the city manager's Friday updates. That's a great way that conveys the outreach with the city and the interactions between the community. And so as you see those and more interactions with different stakeholders, that's one way to measure it. But even if you take it as a mission or a goal, I think that's been an amazing tool that allows a lot of people to see those interactions and help facilitate and grow them.
When we send them out.
Yeah, on Fridays.
Which are going to be out there for the whole community to remember? Okay.
It is currently posted on the web too, just so everybody knows. Yeah.
In addition to that, I think it's, as we have these side community groups or whatever we want to call them that we're working on, reporting back to the council, whoever's participating in whatever group, coming back and reporting, we had a meeting of this, and here's what we discussed, and here's our next steps.
Yeah.
That will also bring us in line so that one of us who's meeting with one person, we all can't meet, so then we bring that back and vice versa.
Right. On the senior activities, the recreational needs assessment, I don't know why we didn't just include recreation for everybody. Young and old.
We only care about seniors.
We only care about seniors. Well, part of that was because of their location and their meeting place, but I don't know, can
any of these can be modified. I mean, you guys are the
I would
ones
like
that
it to
determine
be,
these. This is
I would like it to be just citywide kind of thing, and
Activities in general?
yes, yeah, to all of our population. Oh, no. You didn't remember that? And some of that could be, I know that we've talked before just about we just mentioned it earlier today, about the community advisory committee. So maybe you start it with a senior advisory committee and a youth advisory committee and work at that, and then they buy in and they help get the responses so that it's not just the Jen show trying to get the whole community to respond, so we have all those little fingers out there helping. That might be one of the ways to go about it, so I would like to see that expanded to include all activities.
Wonderful idea. How about under B, community center? You take the first June 15th goal date and turn that into a needs assessment completed. And then we take June 15th date that's existing for the city center, community center picked out and change that to December 31st of 2015. And then we move the next bullet to December 31st of 2016. So we just...
So needs assessment first by June 15, and then the location, you said December 12. Okay, great.
And then the next one, 12/16.
Got it.
That way we've got some more realistic dates there.
And just a reiteration, I mentioned this when we talked about this goal before, there has been a community group that has been meeting for years. They may be stagnant at this time, but I would encourage city staff to reach out to Cal Parsons, who has done an extensive amount of work on needs assessment in the community center.
And we're gonna get ourselves an elephant.
What was that?
We're gonna end up with an elephant here. Creature designed by
The city
committee.
was a part of that process as well, so that'll be easy. Great, yeah, an easy tool to use.
Can we go back to, just to make sure I understand, on D, the senior activities, we were removing senior from that. Is that correct, Mayor?
It's just, community needs assessment. More.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to limit itself to recreational either. Depending on how expensive we want to do it. But
Like adult activity. They like to go to Vegas.
yeah. I'll coordinate that trip.
Well, there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
You got a lot to do in 6 months.
And some of this we've already embarked on. We have,
Some dates in it are firm.
Some are driven by the CDO. Some we don't have a choice.
Training.
Right. The subsidy programs we got.
We do have the subsidy program, Councilmember Hernandez.
Is that for the cabs and the express?
What we were trying to address with this one was, and this is going back to the discussion, trying to develop, if I remember this correctly, we were trying to develop a better process in order to determine residency cards, which then drive eligibility for. The problem that we have now is that unfortunately many times city staff has to, for lack of a better phrase, vouch for somebody or not.
I seen you here last year.
Right, exactly. And so we want to come back to you with some recommendations as to other ways that we could do that. One of the things I've thrown out, and I'm not saying this is the proposal, is a check-in method or something. I mean, I'm not saying that's what we're going to do, but we'll give you some options as to how to determine that.
One of the complaints I heard about that is with the commuter books, they have an expiration date along with the other ones too. The city pays for them, the state pays for it. I mean, I don't really see.
We can add that to the goal as well.
Why do we have to have an expiration date on them? Once you buy them, they're paid for. Everybody knows. I mean, why can't you use it later?
Both you and the mayor have brought this up, and there might have been others of you too. So as an additional part of this, we can have dialogue with Kelly Express and work to reform that.
Yeah, I'd like to see. I would like to see that probably removed off there, have an expiration date on it, because once they're bought and paid for, they're already bought and paid for.
Yeah, but they're bought and paid for at a reduced rate, maybe no expiration on the subsidized books.
Right.
Because there's a bunch of commuter books out there besides subsidized.
Right.
Yeah.
So we can add that to this goal to work with Cat Express to remove that requirement.
Public?
I just have another question. I'm sorry. No. The update on the Avalon Municipal Code, that's looking at the whole shooting match?
What you identified were primarily planning ordinances, and those that were outdated or confusing.
Okay.
So you got the whole code. I'm just kidding. That's a good chunk.
Okay. And that is done by staff, just done with Planning Commission? Yeah, thank you.
I think if we're talking about changes to Title IX, which is the planning and zoning, then I think the code requires that it start at the Planning Commission. There's some changes to the code that we still need to make that were reflective of the general plan. Like we created a resort recreation low density zone. We don't have any development standards for that zone. So there's still some cleanup that we need to do on the code as part of the general plan process. And then there's parts of our code that's just outdated, like our density bonus language needs to be updated to reflect state law. So there's quite a few things just in the planning Title IX that needs to be updated and caught up. I think probably the first draft of that would probably come from the city attorney, especially if it's things that's reflective of changes in state law.
Okay. And one of the things that I was wanting y'all to work on at some point is the sign and banner ordinance. Because one of the reasons for talking about this months ago was because you've got a new museum, we're going to have the Catherine Hotel, and the banners was more, those flags was an issue, and flags aren't really addressed in there. And I know Chamber probably curious about that kind of stuff too, with events and things. So I would like to see that looked at pretty soon.
The commission had it on their list of goals to bring back the sign ordinance as a whole.
Okay.
The lighting language is really archaic, and there's a lot of new technology out there that we want to update. We did adopt some temporary sign language, which we think helped us a little bit about what you're talking about.
Okay.
But yes, signs is something that's going to be coming back.
Okay. Ready? Council?
Move to adopt phase 2 goals.
Okay. Moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any other input from the community? Okay. All right, let's call for the vote.
All ayes.
Okay.
Okay, item number 10. This is a request for the approval of expenditures. Oh, excuse me, before we get into this.
Thank you.
we've got a couple.
I'm going to abstain.
2 recusals on this one because it involves the contract with the island company.
Sorry, I always get ahead of myself there.
Thank you.
So this item is the request for the approval of accommodations and then the pursuit of a multi-year contract to house the USC marching band during the 4th of July extravaganza. You may know that this past year this was a big issue because reservations that we thought were in place turned out to not be in place, and at the last minute we had to scramble and find lodging for the band. It was very upsetting to those involved. It became clear to staff that this was a key component of the celebration, and we didn't want to have this in play. The other part is the Rotary Club came to us and said, hey, we've been in charge of raising the funds for this part of the celebration every year. We'd like to not do that any longer. On top of that, we kind of realized that there were several different fundraising efforts going on, one for fireworks, one for the band. It wasn't very cohesive. So we created a committee of advisors. We pursued this proposed contract for the 4th of July for this year. We met with the marching band and the director. They were very appreciative of that. The city hadn't done that before. They were very clear that if they did come back to the island and they really wanted to, that they wanted to stay in the Atwater Hotel, which is why, if you're wondering why this hotel was selected, it's where they have stayed over the years. The band director is very comfortable there. He feels he can keep a lid on all the activities and the locations of his band members, which we understand. These are young adults, but still they are 18 and 19-year-olds. So what we have here is a request for what's the total amount? It's nearly $18,000. It's at a discounted rate. It's got a very favorable cancellation clause. Historically, the community has always raised that money to pay for the lodging, and we completely expect to do the same this year, especially considering 4th of July falls on a Saturday this year. I think it's going to be a real barn burner. We've reached out to several prominent USC alumni. We'll be doing more of that. We're going to be playing them off of each other, trying to raise as much money as we can. But we've told them that it's all in the interest of fun. It's all in the interest of fun. No, and it's good stuff. But what we're hoping you do tonight is allow us to secure these rooms this year and then pursue a multi-year contract so that this is not an item that we have to worry about as we put this together each year. And Jen certainly can add anything to this if you have additional questions.
Can I ask another question? Why is it 2 nights?
Go ahead, Jen. You probably know it's better than I do.
Happy to answer that. It is 2 nights because we are expanding this to not be a one-day event, a 4th of July event. It's an extravaganza. We're going to use, basically, as Ben said, we met with the USC band directors, and they were more than happy to be put to good work. And last year, the Island Company saw real success with the band going out to Descanso Beach on the following day, on the 5th, and playing out there. And they said they'd be more than happy to do community events, private events for hire, and all of the money that would be raised through any of those events would not go to USC. It would go to us, who brought them over to pay for all of this. So because
lots of little mini concerts, if you will.
Mini concerts, for example, traditionally there's been a donation for the band to go and play at the yacht club following the parade, or I know we've had some hotel owners that have paid to have the band go up onto their balcony and play for guests and for, to the front street. And we're also looking this year to, as from direction from the council, to hold a large community celebration, a community barbecue that would be on the 5th, on the Sunday evening. And so we would have them come to that. And also because it's a holiday weekend and we can't really get away with renting hotel rooms for one night. So,
but frankly, we'd like this to be, if someday it'd be great if it could be a week-long event. I mean, I don't think that maybe that's ambitious, but but I don't. We do see a lot of families that come over here and stay for several days around that time period. So
it really expands. I'm sorry. It really expands our opportunity to add more things for people to do over that time frame. So
hey, that's not a bad idea.
Multi-year contract means it's not always going to be on a weekend too. So, but We're
Right.
talking several days then.
Right, so
we-
we want to see the model continue. We want this to be a multi-day event, no matter if it falls midweek. But the good thing about this multi-year contract that the Island Company and our group of the 4th of July committee has worked out is that the rate isn't exactly staying the same. It will fluctuate. You know, if it is a midweek event, we're not getting charged the same rate that we're getting charged for a Saturday, Sunday this year. So they're being great community partners with us on this aspect, and so we're excited. It gives us a lot more opportunities to expand the holiday and expand some revenue opportunities for it. So
I guess the only other thing I should point out is that you probably already know this, but the kids share rooms. So we you know, and that's their choice, and they arrange that. But that's how we economize and get as many folks as we can.
it's one of the reasons why the Atwater works well, because they have some rooms that are more dormitory style in nature. So.
You know those rooms pretty well, don't you, Ollie?
For 7 years, they stayed there for free.
Yeah, what?
Yep, they did.
Well, I think, I happen to be on the committee, but I think it's a great idea. And I know that the band rehearses right outside there too before they line up, so it's really nice to keep those young people kind of sequestered in one easy location, and it creates some nice momentum while they're practicing. And to farm them out all over the place would just be a nightmare. So I think I'm supporting
Ask for the public comment, we can make a motion.
this, and I then will. Public comment. Okay. Jim, what do you think?
I too was invited to the gathering of all the community partners, and I think it's a wonderful idea. I would fully support your approval of this, and I would just reiterate what Jen was saying. You know, whatever we can do, I know historically in other communities where I've worked, to extend the experience of our guests will lead to more hotel room nights. I mean, we could easily, by programming a Sunday series of events, drive a Sunday overnight in this year's calendar, which is not necessarily the pattern for a 4th of July visitor, despite the 2-night minimum. They might have done Friday, Saturday, but this way we can maybe turn it into a third, you know, so I would support it. Thank you.
I knew I liked Jim when he was at the meeting, that first meeting, and he said, okay, the 5th. He goes, oh, a 5th on the 5th.
But some of the hotels do have a 3-night minimum of the 4th of July because the holiday's on Monday. I will move to approve the reimbursable expenditures for 41 hotel rooms for 2 nights for the 2015 4th of July extravaganza for housing the USC band, and authorize the city manager to enter into a 5-year agreement for fixed pricing for this expenditure for 2016 through 2020. That's just what the...
Okay, let me ask a question now. Can I ask a question?
Oh, yeah, since you're the mayor.
Okay, and maybe it was there. So all of a sudden the USC band says, I don't want to come here anymore. We can get out of the agreement with the Island Company?
We changed that, and it's within 5 days.
Okay.
Before the cancellation, they had some onerous provision, and it's now 5 days notice.
They I think, just included the standard language. When we approached them, they were very quickly switched. I think it's now, it says in your...
It's 5 days.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't read that close.
Cancel it 0 to 5 days prior. So, you know, if you find out on July 1.
Okay.
So this contract can be somewhat renegotiated. You were just talking about hotel rooms or hotel rooms, right? Okay, because that's which I don't think this is going to happen, and I'm not part of the staff, but I will say that I like the fact that it brings the community together, which was something that we've wanted to do. It extends the 4th of July celebration because it's already a really far out, really nice extravaganza, and we're making it bigger. And it organizes the whole program so we don't have to go out soliciting $100 donations, and it organizes the soliciting of that, and it brings the big donors forward so that the small people in Avalon, really us, me, and people alike, we don't have to have that burden. So I can appreciate this whole program, and I think it's going to benefit our community. And
So second my motion.
I second Ollie's motion.
Okay.
Bam.
And if there's no further comment, let's call for the vote.
Three ayes. Marshall, Olson, Sampson, 2 abstentions. Cassidy Hernandez.
And I think meeting, oh, I gotta bring it back. Come back in.
I'm
Campbell.
And I'm at Cal.
I'm buying
I'm
you.
at Cal.
I'm buying you a drink, okay? This one's on me. That's appropriate.
Where's Rich go? Can I
There he
adjourn?
is. He's coming.
Without any notes? That would be nice. Okay, no further anything? Meeting adjourned.
Good night, Tony.